Chapter 46. In Azure Sky City, my Ye family, Wei family, and Xiong family are the strongest martial arts families. They compete with each other and conflicts are inevitable. The Ye family, Wei family, and Xiong family are all big families. They can't fight just because of a little competition. Seeing that Yi Xing didn't understand, Yi Yunwan began to explain in detail. Therefore, the three families have decided that every autumn, the younger generation will enter the Azure Sky Mountain Range to hunt fierce beasts and hold a competition. The family with the best overall results will be the winner, and the loser will have to make concessions in all disputes. As Yi Yunwan spoke, she looked at Yi Xing and smiled. Moreover, the three families will also take out some good things to reward the younger generation with outstanding individual results. The top 10 will all be rewarded. The higher the ranking, the better the reward. In hunting fierce beasts in the Azure Sky Mountain Range, martial artists who knew archery had a huge advantage. Yi Yunwan was obviously very confident in Yi Xing. Yi Xing heard this and nodded slightly. In the Azure Sky Mountain Range, he was like a dragon in the sea. He indeed had a greater advantage than other martial artists when hunting fierce beasts. Yi Xing asked, "The Azure Sky Mountain Range is vast and boundless. There are countless fierce beasts inside. In the hunting competition, will each person enter the mountain to hunt one fierce beast or multiple fierce beasts? If multiple fierce beasts are hunted, how will they be transported back?" Yi Yunwan smiled sweetly and said, "There are ways to do this. There is no need to transport the entire fierce beast back. Just cut off its left ear. Naturally, there will be elders who are familiar with fierce beasts who can distinguish the fierce beast's identity and rank from its left ear. Each family is limited to 30 people participating in the hunting competition. The time limit is 10 days. The higher the rank of the fierce beast, the higher the score." Yi Xing had only been in the Star Continent for 3 months, and this was his first time coming to the main family. In the main family, he spent most of his time cultivating. Therefore, this was the first time Yi Xing heard about the hunting competition from Yi Yunwan. As for the hunting competition, Yi Xing was looking forward to it. It was definitely the time for him to show off his skills. Yi Xing understood the hunting competition, but he still didn't understand the Genius Summit. He asked, "What is this Genius Summit for?" "This is the summit that all the younger generation martial artists of Celestial Azure City want to go to the most. However, only the top 10 elite disciples of the three great families have the qualifications to go. Of course, everyone who has the qualifications to go can also bring a friend along to broaden their horizons." Yi Yunwan explained, "When the elites of the younger generation of the three great clans gather together, they naturally have to compete and compete. Those who stand at the very top are the publicly acknowledged geniuses of Celestial Ocean City. For example, Senior Brother Yunlong won the title of Geniuses of Celestial Ocean City last year." Yi couldn't help but be intrigued. He asked Yi Yunjuans? "Since the proud sons of heaven are at the top, does that mean Senior Brother Yunlong isn't the only one?" Yi Yunwan nodded and said, "That's right. In last year's Genius Summit, there were a total of 4 proud sons of heaven. They were Senior Brother Yunlong, Wei family's Wei Qingyan, Xiong family's Xiong Qifeng, and City Lord Manor's Gu Yijian. Gu Yijian isn't from the three families, so his participation in the Genius Summit is an exception. However, he is the City Lord's son and has extraordinary talent. Therefore, he was also invited last year." Whether it was Yi Yunlong, Wei Qingyan, Xiong Qifeng, or Gu Yijian, they were all famous geniuses of the younger generation in Azure Sky City. In last year's Genius Summit, they were named as the 4 proud sons of heaven. However, other than Yi Yunlong, Yi Xing had only heard of Wei Qingyan. She was a proud daughter of heaven, the dream goddess of the younger generation in Azure Sky City. Compared to Yi Yundai and Yi Yunwan, her fame was much greater. Yi Xing would occasionally hear the Ye family's disciples talking about Wei Qingyan. Senior Brother Yunlong is one of the 4 proud sons of heaven. Right now, his cultivation is only at the peak of the 5th level. My cultivation is at the peak of the 4th level, and all my martial arts are at the Great Circle stage. My strength may not be inferior to Senior Brother Yunlong's. Looks like I'm also at the level of a proud son of heaven? Yi Xing thought to himself. If he wanted to, he could absolutely amaze the world with a single brilliant feat at this genius summit. However, Yi Xing didn't have such plans. Unless someone wanted to challenge him, he couldn't be bothered to reveal his strength in a battle that didn't benefit him. Yi Xing smiled and said, "Looks like in this genius summit, senior brother Yunlong, as a proud son of heaven, will be in the limelight again." Yi Yunwan shook her head and said, "Senior brother Yunlong is a proud son of heaven, and this was the evaluation at last year's Genius Summit. In fact, it can't be called that anymore. There are only two proud sons of heaven left in Azure Sky City. They are Gu Yijin from the City Lord Manor and Xiong Qifeng from the Xiong family. Half a year ago, the two of them had already stepped into the 6th level of the martial path, reaching the level of an elder in their family. Whether it is senior brother Yunlong or Wei Qingyan, if they can't step into the 6th level of the martial path as soon as possible, they won't be able to be mentioned in the same breath as Gu Yijin and Xiong Qifeng." Yi Xing's eyes lit up and said, "Among the younger generation of Azure Sky City, there are already people in the 6th level of the martial path." Yi Xing's battle intent surged. Right now, he was confident that his strength wasn't inferior to Yi Yunlong's. If he were to reach the front line of Azure Sky City's younger generation, it would be too unchallenging. Yi Yunwan sighed and said, "Yes, as the #1 martial arts family in Azure Sky City, the Xiong family is indeed more prosperous than the Ye family and the Wei family. However, I heard that this year, the Wei family has a rising talent called Wei Qingxian. She is Wei Qingyan's younger sister and her talent is much higher than Wei Qingyan's. Just like you, she is also a martial arts genius. Her cultivation has already stepped into the 5th level of the martial path and her strength is catching up to her sister Wei Qingyan. She will definitely shine during this genius summit, but your cultivation is too low." More than a month ago, when Yi Xing fought with Yi Yunkong, his cultivation was only in the middle of the 4th level. In just a month's time, Yi Yunwan obviously didn't know that Yi Xing's cultivation had already reached the peak of the 4th level. Moreover, even if he was at the peak of the 4th level, his cultivation wasn't considered high in front of a 5th-level martial artist. Yi Xing naturally didn't explain it on purpose. After chatting with Yunwan for a while, Yi Xing left the archery range. The next day was the day of the Genius Summit. The location was Wei family's Rain Listening Pavilion. Every junior participating in the Genius Summit was allowed to bring along one person. Yi Xing decided to let Yi Feng broaden his horizons. After applying for leave for Yi Feng, he brought him along. In the past month, Yi Feng had been receiving guidance from Yi Xing every day and had improved in all aspects. His cultivation had reached the middle of the 4th level and he had already cultivated one of his low-grade martial arts techniques to the Great Circle stage. Moreover, 2 of his low-grade martial arts techniques had reached the Great Circle stage. Yi Xing used the super brain to scan and point out Yi Feng's mistakes. Naturally, Yi Feng's martial arts level improved rapidly. Those who received the invitation were the 10 elite disciples of the Ye family. Among these disciples, not all of them had close relationships. Therefore, when they went to the Wei family, they went their own way or in pairs. Accompanying Yi Xing was Yi Yunwan. She also brought along a female disciple at the 4th level of the martial path. Her name was Yi Yuan. She was as beautiful as a flower and was not inferior to Lu Shuangling. Along the way, Yi Xing and Yi Yunwan chatted about a few topics. Yi Feng and Yi Yuan followed behind and struck up a conversation. They talked and laughed and had a lot of fun. The Rain Listening Pavilion was located beside a small lake. The pavilions here were divided into 3 areas. The juniors of the 3 major family clans were located in different areas. Between the pavilions, there was a spacious area. When the disciples of the martial arts families gathered, it was inevitable that they would fight. This was the place where they would fight. Yi Xing and Yi Yunwan didn't arrive early. There were already many people here. When the 2 arrived, they attracted a lot of attention. Yi Xing naturally didn't have that much charm. There were a few juniors of the Ye family who noticed Yi Xing. As for the juniors of the Wei and Xiong families, most of their attention fell on Yi Yunwan. Although Yi Yunwan wasn't as famous as Wei Qingyan, She was still a famous beauty in Azure Sky City. Wherever she went, she would attract attention. Who is this kid? The Ye family's new expert? How come I haven't seen him before? When someone noticed Yi Xing, they asked. Yi Xing and Yi Yunwan had people following behind them. Therefore, no one suspected that he was an ordinary disciple who came with Yi Yunwan. What new expert? His inner strength hasn't been refined into his flesh and blood. He's just a 4th-level martial artist. Someone carefully sized up Yi Xing and said, after having inner strength, those with good eyesight could judge the specific level of cultivation based on the inner strength. However, whether it was the early, middle, or late stage of cultivation, they couldn't tell. He also has a 4th-level martial artist following behind him. Does that mean he's also a genius who was invited to the Genius Summit? A mere 4th-level martial artist? How could he be qualified? I heard that the Ye family produced a genius. He was originally a branch family bumpkin, but he defeated the 8th elite disciple, Yi Yunkong. Therefore, he replaced Yi Yunkong's position and became the 8th elite disciple. Some people didn't understand, but others knew the inside story. In a few words, they explained. Yi Yunkong, I heard that you were beaten to a pulp by this branch family bumpkin. Is that true? Ha! A junior disciple of the Xiong family laughed. Yi Yunkong? Yi Xing frowned. Yi Yunkong was seriously injured by him. How could he recover so quickly? Yi Xing's gaze swept across the area where the Ye family disciples were. Sure enough, he saw Yi Yunkong. When he was questioned by the Xiong family disciple, his eyes were full of anger and hatred as he stared at Yi Xing. Elder Weining went to the Purple Mountain County to ask for a top-grade healing elixir, which allowed Yi Yunkong's injuries to recover a few days ago. Yi Yunwan saw Yi Xing's expression and knew that Yi Xing didn't know about this matter. She explained to Yi Xing. Yi Xing had once obtained a medium-grade star-accumulating pill, so he was well aware of the value of pills. In particular, pills used to treat severe injuries were even more precious. A high-grade healing pill would definitely have a sky-high price. Yi Yunwan had said that Yi Weining had spent a lot of money on this, and that wasn't a lie. Yi Yunkong had a huge hatred towards Yi Xing. Yi Xing could feel it from the former's gaze. He smiled faintly. If Yi Yunkong didn't know what was good for him and still dared to provoke him, he wouldn't mind injuring him again. Yi Xing only noticed Yi Yunkong's hatred towards him. However, he didn't notice that among the Xiong family disciples, a 4th-level martial artist's face changed greatly after seeing him. Seeking recommendation votes. Rolling on the ground seeking recommendation votes. Bowing 90 degrees seeking recommendation votes. Chapter 47. The main characters of this year's Genius Summit were the invited elite disciples, not the ordinary disciples who came with the elite disciples. This young man was sitting in the back row of the Xiong family disciples. It was obvious that he was an ordinary disciple who came with the elite disciples. If Yi Xing had noticed him, he would have definitely recognized him. In the Azure Cloud Mountain Range, 5 Xiong clan disciples had snatched his medicinal ingredients and forced him to jump off a cliff. After that, he had chased after the 5 Xiong clan disciples, and in the end, only this person had escaped. Yi Xing's appearance was naturally deeply imprinted in Xiong Yifei's mind. As soon as he saw Yi Xing, he recognized him. At the same time, Xiong Yifei moved his body and blocked Yi Xing's line of sight with a young man in front of him. Then, Xiong Yifei moved his head to the back of the young man's head and said in an excited but soft voice, "Brother Qi Lu, I saw the murderer who killed young Master Qi Kai. It's the Ye family disciple who just arrived." Xiong Qi Lu, Xiong Qi Kai's cousin, ranked 4th among the elite disciples of the Xiong family. When Xiong Qi Lu heard this, his eyes suddenly emitted a fierce light. He looked at Yi Xing, Yi Yunwan, Yi Feng and Yi Weian and asked, "Which one?" Xiong Yifei looked and said, "It's the one beside Yi Yunwan." Yi Xing felt Xiong Qi Li's gaze and just happened to look over. Their eyes met for a moment and then shifted to Xiong Yifei. Yi Xing's eyes narrowed slightly. Naturally, he recognized Xiong Yifei as the Xiong family disciple who escaped with his life. It seemed that the matter of him killing the Xiong family disciple had been exposed. However, Yi Xing's expression was fearless. The current him was no longer the martial disciple who killed Xianxia Kai, but a martial disciple of the peak martial path level 4. Moreover, he was one of the top 10 elite disciples of the Ye family. Even if the Xiong family knew that he was the murderer, so what? Although the Ye family was not as strong as the Xiong family, they were not inferior by much and could compete with the Xiong family. Moreover, with Yi Xing's own strength, he could already stand on his own. There was no need to worry about the Xiong family's revenge. He wasn't worried that the Xiong clan would retaliate against the Ye family in Qingye village. The Xiong clan and the Ye family were both great clans with a long history in Celestial Ocean City. Since they were able to develop, they naturally wouldn't fight to the death over a small matter. There were hidden rules between them. For example, if one wanted to deal with the branch families of other clans, the main clan could not act. They could only use their own branch families to deal with the branch families. If the main clan acted, it would expand the battle and force the other party's main clan to act as well. Moreover, the Xiong family wanted to deal with Yi Xing, not the Ye family. Yi Xing glanced at Xiong Yifei and Xiong Qila, then withdrew his gaze and calmly walked into the pavilion where the Ye family disciples were. In the pavilion, there were a total of 10 tables and 2 rows of seats, a total of 20. The 10 seats in the front row were for the top 10 elite disciples. The 10 seats in the back row were for the disciples who were brought in. Everyone's seat was determined according to their ranking. For example, on the Ye family side, the first table belonged to Yunlong, who was ranked first. The second table belonged to Yundai, who was ranked second, and so on. Yi Xing was ranked 8th and sat at the 8th table. Below him was Yi Yunkong. Junior brother Yunkong, your injuries have healed very quickly. Have your teeth grown back yet? Seeing that Yi Yunkong was glaring at him furiously, Yi Xing sat down and smiled at Yi Yunkong. This sentence completely hit Yi Yunkong's sore spot. His face immediately flushed red. He angrily snorted and turned his head to the other side. Although Yi Xing didn't arrive early, there were still people who arrived even later than Yi Xing. Those who arrived later were naturally the younger elites with higher rankings. Not long after, the Ye families Yi Yunjue, Yi Yundai, and Yi Yunlong arrived one after another. The Xiong family's side was also basically full. As the host, the Wei family had more junior disciples present. Most of them were just spectators. When Wei Qingyan appeared, the gazes of all the junior disciples in the audience all turned towards her. Wei Qingyan wore a light red dress with a few fiery red roses embroidered on the tail. She was stunning. Her eyebrows were curved like willows and her eyes were clear like spring water. Her nose was small and tall, her cherry lips were light red, and her skin was white as snow. She looked very noble and dignified. In terms of appearance, Wei Qingyan didn't lose to Yi Yunwan. However, in terms of temperament, she was superior. Beside Wei Qingyan was a woman with a veil covering her face. She wore a purple dress embroidered with butterflies. Her waist was tight and her breasts were high. Her figure was enchanting and didn't pale in comparison to Wei Qingyan. Although this woman's face was veiled, it wasn't hard to tell from her figure that her looks were probably not inferior to Wei Qingyan's. Wei Qingyan's gaze swept across the Ye family disciples. Her gaze only paused on Yi Yunlong for a moment before turning to the Xiong family disciples. When her gaze landed on the seat in front of the Xiong family's first table, there was a slight change in her expression. This seat belonged to the Xiong family's number 1 elite disciple, Xiong Qifeng. At last year's Genius Summit, Yi Yunlong, Wei Qingyan, Gu Yijian, and Xiong Qifeng were evenly matched. As the top 4 experts of the younger generation, they were crowned as the 4 proud sons of heaven. However, this year, Wei Qingyan and Yunlong were still stuck at the 5th level of the martial path. Gu Yijian and Xiong Qifeng had already stepped into the 6th level of the martial path. Their strength was comparable to the family's elders. They didn't even have the interest to attend the Genius Summit. Yi Yunlong's gaze landed on Xiong Qifeng's seat. There was also a change in his expression. Being surpassed by a disciple of the same generation who was once on the same level as him wasn't a good feeling. At this Genius Summit, Gu Yijian and Xiong Qifeng were both lacking. Compared to the previous Genius Summit, they paled in comparison. No matter who it was, even if they were the strongest person present, they didn't have the qualifications to be called the proud sons of heaven. That was because there were still the two great mountains of Gu Yijin and Xianxia above them. The title of proud sons of heaven in Tiansong City currently belonged to only Gu Yijin and Xianxia, young heroes of the younger generation. As the host, Wei Qingyan first gave an opening speech, welcoming the younger disciples of the Ye family and the Xiong family to attend the Genius Summit. Although she was just saying polite words, most of the youths listened attentively. After Wei Qingyan was done with the pleasantries, she introduced the girl with a veil on her face beside her. Many people guessed correctly. This girl was Wei Qingyan's younger sister, Wei Qingxian. Wei Qingxuan's looks didn't pale in comparison to her elder sister Wei Qingyan's. However, because her face was covered by a veil, the young heroes present had no chance to see her beautiful face. This made many male disciples feel that it was a pity. However, even though Wei Qingxuan's face couldn't be seen, she still attracted everyone's attention. That was because her cultivation speed was too fast. Wei Qingxian had just turned 14 years old and her cultivation had already reached level 5 martial path. Even Yi Yunlong, Wei Qingyan, Gu Yijin, and Xianxia, the four proud sons of heaven from last year, stepped into level 5 martial path at around 15 years old. Most importantly, not only did Wei Qingxian cultivate quickly, she was also a martial arts prodigy. She had cultivated many low-grade martial arts techniques to the Great Circle realm, which was shocking. The main purpose of the Genius Summit was for the young elites of the three big families to spar with each other and prove their strength. Therefore, after Wei Qingyan's introduction, she returned to her seat with Wei Qingxian. The free challenge period began. Although it was free challenge, there were hidden rules. That was, the lower the ranking, the first to fight. Gradually, the higher the ranking, the higher the ranking. The 9th and 10th ranked disciples of the three great clans quickly finished fighting each other. There was not much difference between the strength of these disciples. Among the 10th ranked disciples, Yi and Yi Yunhong of the Yi clan were the strongest. They were superior to the 10th ranked disciples of the Wei and Xiong clans respectively. Yi Yunhong was originally ranked 9th. Yi Xing defeated Yi Yunkong, which caused him to drop a rank. Therefore, his strength was stronger. However, Yi Yunhong was defeated by Xianxia, who was ranked 9th in the Xiong family. After Xianxia defeated Yi Yunhong, he immediately challenged Yi Yunkong. Yi Yunkong had just recovered from his serious injuries and his strength decreased instead of increasing. He was also defeated. After that, Xianxia continued to challenge the 9th elite disciple of the Wei family, Wei Qingming, and defeated him in one fell swoop. It was clear that his strength was not weak. Xianxia won 3 rounds in a row and left the stage with a face full of pride. At this time, Xianxia signaled the 8th elite disciple of the Xiong family, Xianxia, with his eyes. Xianxia immediately walked out. Xianxia's gaze swept over the Ye family's pavilion and fixed on Yi Xing. He proudly said, "Ye family's 8th ranked disciple, get out here." Most of the Ye family's disciples were enraged. Even the Wei family's disciples were startled. Although the Xiong family and Ye family's competition was fierce and they had always been at odds, that was only in the dark. On the surface, they were still very harmonious. Any conflicts and competition were resolved through the hunting competition. Like Xianxia directly telling the other to get out, this really hurt the harmony on the surface. Yi Xing naturally knew the reason why Xianxia disregarded the harmony on the surface. But this didn't mean he wasn't angry. The reason he killed those Xiong family disciples was because they stole his herbs and wanted to kill him. This kind of person must be killed. Yi Xing's eyes flashed with cold light. He stood up and walked out. Xianxia coldly looked at Yi Xing and said word by word, "Did you kill Xianxia?" Ye family's and Wei family's disciples suddenly realized why Xianxia didn't even care about the harmony on the surface with Yi Xing. So it was like this. But their faces were also filled with shock. Yi Xing actually killed the Xiong family's main family disciple. Moreover, Xianxia was the son of a Xiong family's 7th-stage martial path master. Ye family's disciples were even more surprised. After Yi Xing entered the main family, he had been cultivating in the main family. How could he have time to kill Xianxia? Before entering the main family, Yi Xing was only a third-stage martial path martial disciple. Xianxia was a famous young genius of the Xiong family. His cultivation was as high as the peak of fourth-stage martial path. How could he have killed him? Who is Xianxia? I don't know him. Yi Xing lightly said. When he killed those Xiong family disciples, he shot arrows from afar. Although Xiong Yifei was sure that Yi Xing shot the arrows, it was only a guess. He didn't see it with his own eyes. Of course, Yi Xing wouldn't admit it. Being guessed by others was one thing, but admitting to it himself was another. Chapter 48. If Yi Xing did not admit it, the Xiong family would not have any evidence. The Ye family would naturally protect the elite disciple Yi Xing, and the Xiong family would not be able to do anything. Once Yi Xing admitted it, the Xiong family would be able to find the Ye family to vent their anger. The Xiong family would have reason and evidence, and the Ye family would have no choice but to hand over Yi Xing. Therefore, even if Xianxia and the others deserved to die, Yi Xing would never admit it. He did not admit it not because he did not dare to admit it, but because he did not have enough strength. If Yi Xing was a martial Dao master, he would definitely pat his chest and admit that he was the one who killed them. Why would he be afraid of the Xiong family? On the contrary, the Xiong family would apologize to him. This made Yi Xing even more determined to become a martial saint and a peerless expert. Without strength, even if he did what he should do, he would not admit it. Therefore, formidable strength was something that must be possessed. Yi Xing's denial made Xianxia angry and said, Yi Xing, don't be afraid to admit what you did. You killed Xiong Yiming in the Azure Cloud Mountain Range and then chased after Xianxia and the others for an entire day. Outside the Azure Cloud Mountain Range, you killed Xianxia and 2 other disciples of my Xiong family, and you still want to deny it? Xiong family did not make a big fuss about the death of Xianxia and the others because they did not know the murderer. The disciples of the Ye family and Wei family did not know much about it. Even if they knew a little bit of information, it was not comprehensive. Now that they heard Xianxiao's words, they knew that not only Xianxia died, but also 3 other disciples of the Xiong family. All 4 of them were killed by Yi Xing? The disciples of the Ye family and Wei family found it hard to believe, but the disciples of the Ye family who knew about Yi Xing's archery skills were somewhat convinced. Yi Xing shrugged and said, I have never killed anyone. Xianxia, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. Otherwise, I will sue you for slander. Yi Xing's last sentence sounded a little strange, but Xianxia could understand it. He snorted coldly and said, Slander? Yi Xing, you didn't kill all of them. Xiong Yifei escaped from your hands. He's right here. Are you going to testify in front of me? At this time, Xiong Yifei stood up, pointed at Yi Xing and said loudly, It's you. Even if you turned into ashes, I would still recognize you. You killed Xiong Yiming, young Master Qi, Xiong Wuxia and Xiong Guanshan. Yi Xing glanced at Xiong Yifei and said, Which eye of yours saw me kill them? Xiong Yifei paused for a moment. He had not seen Yi Xing's attack with his own eyes. However, they had forced Yi Xing to jump off the cliff. Naturally, Yi Xing was taking revenge on them. Xiong Yifei said, You killed them from afar with a bow and arrow. It's you. At this time, someone from the Ye family said, I don't know if Yi Xing killed the Xiong family disciples, but his archery skills are very high. It's easy for him to kill a 4th-stage martial artist. I can prove this. It was Yi Yunjue. Yi Xing's eyes narrowed. He hated traitors like Yi Xing the most. Other than Yi Yunkong, the rest of the Ye family disciples were very angry at Yi Yunjue's words. At this time, they should try their best to protect their own family. Yi Yunjue's words were obviously disadvantageous to Yi Xing. Yi Yunjue did not care whether the others were angry or not. He only had one thought in his mind. As long as there was a chance to kill Yi Xing, he would not miss it. My archery skills are not low, but I didn't kill anyone. In the Mount Qingyun, I found a red blood Ganoderma. After I killed the ferocious beast guarding the red blood Ganoderma, A few Xiong family disciples suddenly appeared and tried to kill me. They wanted to steal my red blood Ganoderma. Fortunately, I reacted quickly and jumped off the cliff. Yixing laughed. Wasn't it just making up a story? I'll make it up for you. I was washed away by the river below the cliff and was seriously injured. I escaped by luck and hid in a cave to recuperate for a few days before I recovered. How could the Xiong family disciples stole my red blood Ganoderma and were killed by others? How could you blame me for it? Yixing asked fiercely. You didn't give up after stealing my red blood Ganoderma and wanted to kill me? Is there any justice in the Xiong family? Do you have any humanity? Xiong Yifei shouted, No. You didn't get hurt when you jumped off the cliff. You hid under the cliff and shot Xiong Yiming and Child Kai Kai when we let our guard down. It was you. Yixing chuckled and said, That cliff was 60 to 70 meters high. At that time, I was only a second-stage martial disciple. When I jumped into the river, I spat out a mouthful of blood and was seriously injured. At that time, I was swept away by the torrential river. How could I still shoot arrows to hurt people? Why don't you try jumping off a 60 to 70 meter cliff? Even if you're a martial artist of the 4th stage of the martial Tao, let's see if you can still stand up. The disciples of the Ye family and Wei family began to whisper amongst themselves. They clearly believed Yixing's words. A 60 to 70 meter cliff, even a martial artist at the 5th stage of the martial Tao would fall to his death if he jumped down. Even if there was a river below, the river wasn't deep, so the chances of death were high. Even if they didn't die, they would be severely injured. Even the disciples of the Xiong family felt that Yixing's words were very normal. It was too abnormal to not be injured after jumping down. Xiong Yifei saw that Yixing's words were believed by most people and anxiously said, You're lying, you weren't washed away by the river at that time, you weren't injured, you were still there. After you shot Xiong Yiming, you even spoke. Yixing pretended to be surprised and said, How is that possible, what did I say? Xiong Yifei said, You said, Tiansong City's Xiong family, Black Bear, that bear, I've heard of. Before Xiong Yifei could finish, Yixing sneered and said, That's bullshit. Even if you want to slander me, you should at least come up with something normal. Black Bear, that bear? Why would I say such low-level words? Most of the disciples of the Ye family and Wei family burst into laughter. Their laughter was full of ridicule. The disciples of the Xiong family were livid. Xiong Yifei pointed at Yixing with a trembling finger and almost vomited blood. He was speechless by Yixing's words. Nonsense, I'll kill you. Xiong Qizhao was infuriated and charged at Yixing. Xiong Qizhao rushed at Yixing like a bear, his hand like a bear's paw, fiercely slapping down. Middle-grade martial technique, Bear King's Paw. Bear King's Paw was a famous martial technique of the Xiong family. When used, it was like a fierce beast, extremely powerful. Xiong Qizhao's attainment in Bear King's Paw was not low. It was far beyond the initial stage and was about to reach the advanced stage. It indeed looked like a fierce bear's sudden attack. Ordinary martial artists would be shocked by this momentum and be hit directly by his paw. Bear King's Paw pursued power, its attack power was extraordinary. If hit, it would not end well. However, Xiong Qizhao's momentum did not affect Yixing at all. He did not retreat half a step and his hands slapped forward as if they were boneless. Middle-grade martial technique, soft bone palm. The two palms slapped together, but there was no sound of collision. Yixing's hands were like water, retreating as soon as they touched Xiong Qizhao's palms. Xiong Qizhao suddenly felt that his palms were a little uncontrollably slanted to the side. The power of this palm was dissipated in the blink of an eye. At this time, Yixing's soft hands suddenly shot out like a spring. They went past Xiong Qizhao's palms and slapped his chest. Xiong Qizhao could not react in time. Bang 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 bang, several muffled sounds were heard almost at the same time. Xiong Qizhao screamed and his body was suddenly sent flying. He vomited blood and fell more than 10 meters away. Soft bone palm was not only used to dissipate moves, it also had a very strong and very fast counterattack ability. Xiong Qizhao was not much stronger than Yixing before he was injured. Now, Yixing's cultivation was much higher than when he fought with Yi Yunkong. His inner strength was more vigorous, so naturally he defeated Xianxia easily. All the disciples present were shocked. They did not expect Xianxia to be defeated so easily. Many Ye family disciples sucked in a breath of cold air. Yi Xing's strength had improved a lot compared to a month ago. "Kid, don't be so arrogant. Xiong will fight you." Xiong Qizhao had just been defeated and a disciple of the Xiong family immediately rushed out. Xiong Qishuan was ranked 5th among the Xiong family's elite disciples. He was 3 ranks higher than Xiong Qizhao. According to the unspoken rules of the Genius Summit, the rankings should be ranked from low to high. However, Yi Xing easily defeated Xiong Qizhao. If the 6th and 7th ranked elite disciples of the Xiong family went up, they would only be abused by Yi Xing. Therefore, Xiong Qishuan, who was ranked 5th, directly rushed out. He did not care what others thought and did not care whether Yi Xing agreed or not. Xiong Qishuan's first move was a thunderous strike. He leaped 10 meters into the air, and with a flip of his body, his leg came down vertically. There was an explosion in the air, like a clap of thunder. Middle-grade martial skill, thunderous kick. Xiong Qishuan's cultivation was at the late 5th stage of the martial path. His attainment in thunderous kick was also quite high. His strength was much higher than Xiong Qizhao's. The power of this kick was quite terrifying. If it hit, it was hard to imagine what the consequences would be. It would definitely be a serious injury. Yi Xing used the Big Dipper step and dodged the kick. Xiong Qishuan's kick landed on the ground, causing a crack to appear on the hard floor. Bang! Xiong Qishuan just landed and his body jumped up again. His leg was like lightning and his voice was like thunder. He continued to ruthlessly kick Yi Xing. Yi Xing dodged the opponent's first attack but did not dodge the second time. The corner of his mouth raised into a disdainful smile, and he also kicked out. Middle-grade martial skill, wind-chasing kick. The angle and timing of Yi Xing's kick was perfect. Before the opponent's leg landed on Yi Xing's body, Yi Xing's leg had already kicked the opponent's knee. Immediately, Xiong Qishuan felt his entire leg go numb and he lost all his strength. However, Yi Xing's leg was like the wind and another kick flew out. Bang! It hit Xiong Qishuan's chest. Xiong Qishuan also flew up and vomited blood as he fell over 10 meters away. A burst of exclamations sounded. Yi Xing's strength was beyond everyone's expectations. Facing the 5th-ranked elite disciple of the Xiong family, Xiong Qishuan, he actually won cleanly. Even the veiled Wei Qingxian from the Wei family looked at Yi Xing with a trace of interest. She could see that whether it was soft bone hands or wind-chasing kick, Yi Xing's attainments were quite extraordinary. Chapter 49. As they gazed at Yi Xing, who stood there like a towering mountain, the expressions of everyone changed. Most of the younger generation had looks of disbelief on their faces. They found it hard to believe what had just happened. Yi Xing was able to defeat Yunkong and rank 8th among the Ye family's elite disciples. This proved that he had the strength to back it up. Xiong Qizhao was also ranked 8th among the Xiong family's elite disciples. Therefore, even if Yi Xing had defeated Xiong Qizhao cleanly, it would at most be a little surprising. It definitely wouldn't reach the point of disbelief. However, Xiong Qishuan was different. He was ranked 5th among the Xiong family's elite disciples. This ranking was much more important than being ranked 8th. Even the 4th-ranked elite disciples of the Ye family and Wei family wouldn't dare say that they could easily defeat Xiong Qishuan. Yi Xing was only in the 4th stage of the martial path. Being able to defeat Yunkong and rank 8th among the Ye family's elite disciples was already very surprising. Now that he had defeated Xiong Qishuan, it was naturally hard to believe. The younger generation of the Wei family was shocked that the Ye family had produced a person with heaven-defying combat strength. The younger generation of the Xiong family was shocked and gnashing their teeth in anger. The younger generation of the Ye family had the most complicated expressions. Some were happy, some were sad, and some were worried. Yi Yunxiao and Yi Yunjian, who were ranked 6th and 7th among the Ye family's elite disciples, couldn't help but sigh. Without a doubt, Yi Xing's strength had already surpassed theirs. Even the 5th-ranked Yi Yunzhong felt that he wasn't Yi Xing's match. This was because even if he were to fight against Xiong Qishuan, he didn't have the confidence to win. However, Yi Xing had cleanly defeated Xiong Qishuan. Yi Yunjue and Yi Yunkong were frustrated when they saw that Yi Xing's strength had increased so quickly. Their faces were filled with worry. As for Yi Yunwan and Yi Yunlong, they were pleasantly surprised, but Yi Yunlong was also worried. Yi Xing was only at the 4th stage of the martial path and his strength was already so strong. If he reached the 5th stage of the martial path, wouldn't he surpass him? Gu Yijian and Xiong Qifeng used to be heaven's favored ones like him. He felt very uncomfortable being surpassed by the two of them. If he were to be surpassed by Yi Xing, whom he had witnessed growing up in Greenleaf Village, he would be even more depressed. Yi Xing, you killed my cousin. Give me your life. After a brief moment of anger, another person from the Xiong family rushed out. It was the 4th-ranked elite disciple, Xiong Qila. Xiong Qila's cultivation was at the peak of the 5th stage of the martial path. His martial arts attainments were quite high and he was much stronger than Xiong Qishuan. His strength was higher than the 4th-ranked elite disciple of the Wei and Ye family. He could definitely challenge the 3rd-ranked elite disciple of the Wei and Yi families. What's wrong? Does your Xiong clan want to take turns to fight and bully us with numbers? The 4th-ranked elite disciple wants to challenge the 8th-ranked elite disciple of the Ye family. Don't you have any shame? At the same time, Yunwan also rushed out and stood in front of Yi Xing. She said, Xiong Qila, if you want to fight, I Yunwan will fight with you. Xiong Qila's frivolous gaze swept over Yi Yunjuan's exquisite body. He said, so what if he's 8th? His strength is not inferior to yours. You think you can fight with me just because you're 4th? It's more likely that you'll fight with me on the bed. You bastard! Yi Yunjuan's pink face suddenly turned red. She was furious and was about to start a life-and-death battle with Xiong Qila. Senior Yunwan. Yi Xing grabbed Yi Yunjuan's delicate hand. He glanced coldly at Xiong Qila and said, leave it to me. Believe me, I can take care of this animal whose mouth is full of shit. Yi Yunwan looked at Yi Xing. Yi Xing nodded and gave her an affirmative look. Yi Xing's confidence was what Yi Yunwan admired the most. She nodded and said, I believe you. Teach him a lesson for me. It's best if you can slap his mouth until it's broken. Yi Xing smiled and let go of Yunjuan's delicate hand. He said, all right, I'll slap his cheap mouth until it's broken. Even though Yi Xing had let go of her hand, Yunwan could still feel the touch of Yi Xing's hand. She gave Yi Xing a gentle look and returned to her original position. Everyone could see Yunjuan's expression. Her feelings for Yi Xing definitely went beyond the ordinary friendship between a man and a woman. Yi Yunjue's eyes were filled with jealousy. He cursed in his heart that Yi Xing would be beaten to death by Xiong Qila. Arrogant brat, die. Just as Yi Yunwan returned to her original position, Xiong Qila roared and rushed towards Yi Xing like a phantom. His speed was too fast. In fact, the phantom even created a shadow image clone. It gave people the feeling that there were two people. Middle-grade martial arts, light body technique, phantom steps. Xiong Qila's phantom steps had already been cultivated to the realm of great success. When he took a step, it was like a phantom walking, making people unable to grasp it. When the juniors could not see Xiong Qila's figure clearly, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. Xiong Qila's figure suddenly became clear and appeared behind Yi Xing. He pointed a finger and stabbed the back of Yi Xing's head. The sound of something breaking through the air came from this finger. Middle-grade martial arts, air-piercing finger. The finger technique used a point to hit the surface. Its penetrating power was extremely strong and its destructive power was very great. Xiong Qila's air-piercing finger had already been cultivated to the realm of great success. Its finger strength was terrifying. If this finger hit, Yi Xing's head would definitely be pierced through. When the air-piercing finger was used, Xiong Qila's figure had not yet become clear. When Xiong Qila's figure became clear, his finger was about to hit Yi Xing's head. It looked like he was about to be stabbed. Some of the Ye family's juniors could not help but cry out in alarm. Yi Yunjue and Yi Yunkong, on the other hand, were secretly smiling. The Xiong family's juniors did not restrain their smiles. As long as Yi Xing was alive, He would not admit to killing Xianxia. The Ye family would definitely protect him. However, as long as Xianxia stabbed Yixing to death, the Xiong family would have Xiong Yifei as a witness. The Ye family would not know what had happened in the past. Then it would be completely true that Yixing had killed Xianxia and the others. When the time came, the Ye family would definitely not support a dead person. Hearing the sound of the wind behind his head, Yixing's lips curled up slightly. In an instant, Yixing stepped on the Big Dipper and disappeared in a flash. Xianxia's finger had clearly hit Yixing's head, but there was nothing. It had only hit Yixing's afterimage for a moment. Competing with Yixing in body movement? Xianxia was still too young. How could the phantom steps of the Mastery Realm be compared with the 7 stars steps of the Perfection Realm? Yixing did not use the 7 stars steps of the Perfection Realm at all. He easily dodged Xianxia's sudden attack. Xianxia exclaimed. Obviously, Yixing's ability to dodge his finger was beyond his expectation. You've also practiced a body movement to the Mastery Realm? I'd like to see how many air-piercing fingers you can block. As he spoke, Xianxia executed the phantom steps. His silhouettes overlapped as he continued to charge towards Yixing. Yixing's 7-star steps was purely a quick reaction. However, Xianxia's phantom steps created layers of shadows as he walked. It had a hallucinatory effect. If he didn't even know Xianxia's exact location, how could he fight? The lethality of the air-piercing finger was astonishing. One could dodge it once, but it was difficult to dodge it twice. Therefore, martial artists with the same cultivation level were basically not Xianxia's match. However, Xianxia's opponent was Yixing. His phantom steps could confuse others, but it could not confuse Yixing. Xianxia had just stepped out and his silhouettes overlapped when Yixing suddenly rushed over and punched out. The wind from the fist whistled and the tiger roared. Yixing was like a ferocious tiger released from its cage. His power was like thunder. Middle-grade martial skill, Roaring Tiger Fist. Xianxia planned to use the phantom steps to circle behind Yixing and then use the air-piercing finger to kill Yixing. Who would have thought that Yixing would actually see his exact location and rush over so quickly? In a hurry, Xianxia could only make an emergency move. The air-piercing finger stabbed out like a spear and suddenly stabbed forward. Bang! Xianxia's air-piercing finger collided with Yixing's roaring tiger fist. Yixing cultivated the perfect bone-explosive fist and refined all the bones in his body. Furthermore, he cultivated the low-grade body refinement technique, green skin technique, and had reached the large success stage. His flesh was hard and his fist was almost like a hammer. Although he could not use his fist to clash with a sword, it was enough to clash with Xianxia's finger. Gotcha! The finger that Xianxia pointed out was directly broken by Yixing's punch. At the same time, his entire arm retracted as if it had been electrocuted. Perfect stage roaring tiger fist? A Wei family junior exclaimed. Middle-grade martial skill at the perfect stage? Even among all the juniors in Celestial Azure City, it was hard to find a second one. How could it not be shocking? While this person was exclaiming, Yixing had already seized the opportunity to attack. Striding forward like an arrow, the tiger roared and the roaring tiger fist blasted out again. At this moment, Xianxia's finger bones were broken and he was in intense pain. He was almost defenseless. Yixing's fist drove straight in and directly smashed into Xianxia's face. An even more shrill scream rang out. Xianxia's blood splattered and his face was covered in flowers. His body was blasted back by this punch and he rolled dozens of meters away. Xianxia fell to the ground and groaned. His nose was smashed and a mouthful of broken teeth and blood flowed out of his mouth. Because his nose suffered a heavy blow, tears flowed from his eyes. He looked as miserable as one could imagine. Hiss! Many juniors sucked in a breath of cold air. Other than Yi Feng, who had always blindly worshipped Yixing, no one could have expected this outcome. The juniors of the Ye family were pleasantly surprised and shocked. Just what level had Yixing's strength reached? Even Yi Yunlong couldn't help but start to doubt. Could it be that Yixing has the qualifications to fight with me now? This thought made Yi Yunlong feel incredulous. He didn't dare to believe it. Xianxia was heavily injured. Immediately, 3 people from the Xiong family rushed forward. Among them, 2 went to treat Xianxia. As for Xianxia, who was ranked 3rd among the elite disciples of the Xiong family, he shouted angrily at Yixing, "What a vicious and merciless brat, to actually be so heavy-handed." Yixing clenched his left fist and placed it behind his back. His entire person was like a deep abyss as he stood upright, revealing an incomparably heavy aura that wasn't ostentatious. Yixing didn't explain who was the vicious one. He only looked indifferently at Xianxia. "If you want to fight, then let's fight. If not, then scram. Please recommend me. Please recommend me. Please recommend me. I'm returning to Hunan today. I'm currently at the airport, preparing to board the plane to attend my sister's wedding. I'm returning to Shenyang on the 16th. Chapter 50. If you want to fight, then let's fight. If you don't want to fight, then scram. Yixing's words were probably the most domineering words spoken at this year's Genius Summit. Yixing and Xianxia's battle was witnessed by all the junior martial artists present. Xianxia's move was meant to kill Yixing, while Yixing's attack was not light, but he had no intention of taking Xianxia's life. So, just who was the ruthless one, all the junior martial artists were clear in their hearts. Xianxia saying that Yixing was ruthless was pure nonsense, without the slightest bit of logic. Since the other party was being unreasonable, Yixing could not be bothered to argue with him. "If you want to fight, then I'll keep you company. If not, then scram." Yixing's words caused Xianxia and the Xiong family juniors to seethe with anger, but it also caused the Ye family and Wei family juniors to feel carefree, looking at Yixing with a whole new level of respect. If it was said that Yixing was only a new master of the Ye family in the eyes of others before, then from this moment onwards, he was already an influential figure among the junior martial artists of Azure Sky City. As the news of this year's Genius Summit spread, Yixing's name would definitely spread throughout Azure Sky City. Xianxia glared at Yixing, his eyes spitting fire. He clenched his fists so tightly that they creaked. The anger in his heart told him that he should go up and tear Yixing to pieces right now. But his reason told him that Yixing was very dangerous. If he fought with him, he would lose more than he would win. Even if he won, it would not be an overwhelming victory. As long as it was a draw, it would add glory to Yixing's battle record and raise Yixing's reputation. If he lost, then he would lose all face. In Yixing's story, he would become a stepping stone that others would talk about enthusiastically. "Chiyu, with your status, why lower yourself to the same level as this country bumpkin?" At this moment, someone from the Xiong family said, "He has already won 3 rounds in a row. Let him rest." The person who spoke was Xiong Chi, the second-ranked elite disciple of the Xiong family. Since Xiong Chi was not here, he was the leader of the Xiong family disciples. Xiong Chikai's words were obviously flattering Xianxia, giving Xianxia a way out. If Xianxia were to fight with Yixing again, it was very likely that the Xiong family would lose face again. "Count yourself lucky, you country bumpkin." With a way out, Xianxia naturally stopped the thought of making a move on Yixing. He smiled at Yixing and said, "Country bumpkin, you might not know who Xiong Chizai is. Let me tell you, he is the only son of my Xiong family's 7th-stage martial Dao elder, Xiong Baotian. Do you know what the consequences will be? You will die without a burial ground. A master of the 7th stage of the martial path." Yixing's heart slightly fluctuated. He was indeed a little surprised. He did not expect that the Xiongqi he killed was actually the son of a 7th-stage martial Dao master. However, after a slight fluctuation, Yixing's heart returned to normal. So what if he was the son of a 7th-stage martial Dao master? The son of a 7th-stage martial Dao master could take his life and snatch his herbs, but he could not fight back? Impossible. Yixing did not regret killing those few Xiong family disciples in the slightest. Not to mention now that he knew that the other party was the son of a 7th-stage martial Dao master. Even if he knew the other party's background before killing them, he would still hunt them to death. A 7th-stage martial Dao master? Yixing clenched his fists, a fighting spirit rose in his heart. He actually had a feeling of anticipation. As his cultivation became higher and higher, his strength became stronger and stronger. He did not put ordinary opponents in his eyes. It should be time for a strong opponent to stimulate him, otherwise, the path of a martial artist would be too peaceful and too boring. Yi Xing felt that the blood in his body had already begun to heat up. Yi Xing. When Yi Xing returned to his seat, Yi Feng was so excited that he could not speak. He gave Yi Xing a thumbs up, his emotions unable to be any more excited. To Yi Feng, who was born in Xianxia village, which of the younger generation of Tiansong City was not high and mighty. But now, he personally saw Yi Xing sweep through the younger generation of the Xiong family, beating the elite disciples of the Xiong family until they did not dare to fight again. As a member of Xianxia village, Yi Feng could almost feel the same, his heart surging with excitement. Among the younger generation of the Ye family, except for Yi Yunkong and Yi Yunjue, all of them cast admiring gazes at Yi Xing. Even Yi Yunlong's gaze was filled with melancholy, but it was more of a pleasant surprise. Among the younger generation of the Wei family, many of the younger generation's elite gazes followed Yi Xing's figure. Yi Xing felt a spirited gaze that was different from the rest. He followed his senses and looked over. The owner of the gaze was Wei Qingxian, her face covered by a thin veil. Her eyes were clear, her big watery eyes seemed to be able to speak. Wei Qingxuan's gaze met with Yi Xing's for a blink of an eye, then she looked away. But Yi Xing could read the message in her gaze, very high level of martial arts attainment. Unlike the others who were surprised by Yi Xing's martial arts attainment, Wei Qingxuan's meaning was more like interest and admiration. Yi Xing instantly understood. Wei Qingxian must have also cultivated a mid-grade martial arts technique to perfection. The Genius Summit continued. However, after Yi Xing's 3 consecutive victories, the following battles were much more boring. Even the battles between the 4th and 3rd ranked disciples could not compare to the exciting battles of Yi Xing against the 3 elite disciples of the Xiong family. It was only until the battle between Wei Qingxian and Yi Yundai that the scene became more exciting. Both of them were the 2nd-ranked elite disciples of their respective families. There was no need to talk about their strength. Moreover, Yi Yundai was a famous beauty in Azure Sky City, while Wei Qingxian was a newly matured super genius. The clash between them naturally attracted the attention of all the younger martial artists. Even Yi Xing could not take his eyes off them. Both of them wore long purple dresses. Their figures were soft and graceful. When they exchanged blows, it was as if they were dancing. It was too beautiful to behold. Yi Yundai used a mid-grade martial arts technique, soft bone palm. The soft bone palm above the large success stage did not look as simple as being soft and boneless. It concealed an extremely sharp attack. Wei Qingxian used a mid-grade martial arts technique, snake coiling hands. It was also a soft martial arts technique. When both hands attacked, it was like 2 dancing snakes. In terms of cultivation, Yi Yundai was much higher. She was at the peak of the 5th rank. Wei Qingxian was only at the beginning of the 5th rank. However, under Wei Qingxuan's attacks, Yi Yundai was at a disadvantage. Under the coiling of the snake coiling hands, she could not use her soft bone palm at all. In less than 10 moves, both of Yi Yundai's arms were coiled by Wei Qingxian. They were completely locked and she could not pull them out. And Wei Qingxuan's other hand quickly slapped onto one of Yi Yundai's vital points. Wei Qingxian did not use too much strength. With a light slap, she retreated like a swallow. Sister Qingxian has good skills. I've lost. Yi Yundai knew that the opponent was going easy on her. Her eyes were filled with shock as she admitted defeat. Yi Yundai's easy defeat made the crowd gasp in surprise. Wei Qingxuan's strength was too strong. Just like Yi Xing, she had the ability to challenge those of a higher rank. Moreover, compared to Yi Xing, Wei Qingxian was even more shocking. Firstly, she was a young girl with an enchanting figure. She was obviously more attractive than Yi Xing. Secondly, not only was her battle strength shocking, she also had a heaven-defying cultivation talent. At the age of 14, she had already stepped into the 5th rank of the martial path. On the other hand, Yi Xing was 16 years old and was still in the 4th rank of the martial path. In the eyes of the crowd, it was obvious that Wei Qingxuan's potential was much greater. After Wei Qingxian defeated Yi Yundai, she immediately challenged Xiong Chikai from the Xiong family. Xiong Chikai was the same as Yi Yundai. He was also at the peak of the 5th rank of the martial path. Moreover, his martial arts were firm and fierce. His body was strong and his inner strength was dense. He was even harder to deal with than Yi Yundai. However, Xiong Chikai was the same as Yi Yundai. In less than 10 moves, he was defeated by Wei Qingxian. Wei Qingxuan's mastery of the snake twisting hands was very high. As soon as she attacked, Xiong Chikai was restrained by her. He could not use his strength at all and was beaten very sullenly. Wei Qingxian won 2 matches in a row. Moreover, she won within 10 moves. For a moment, the limelight was unparalleled. She completely overshadowed Yi Xing from before. Although Yi Xing was famous, he was still disliked by many people. For example, the disciples of the Xiong family. Even the disciples of the Ye family, Yi Yunjue and Yi Yunkong, did not like him. However, Wei Qingxian was different. Regarding her achievements, no one hated her. Whether it was the juniors of the Ye family, the Wei family, or the Xiong family, they were all very fond of this genius girl who was rising rapidly. Before the Genius Summit, Wei Qingxian was only a rising star with a little reputation in Celestial Azure City. With her battle results, after this Genius Summit, her name would definitely spread throughout Celestial Azure City. Her name would be illustrious. Just as the martial artists of the younger generation thought that Wei Qingxian would leave in glory after defeating Yi Yundai and Xiong Chikai, Wei Qingxian said something shocking. Wei Qingxuan's gaze fell on Yi Yunlong. Yi Yunlong, I want to challenge you. Challenge Yi Yunlong? Other than Yi Xing, who had already expected this, the rest of the martial artists of the younger generation were all shocked. Yi Yunlong was one of the 4 proud sons of heaven at last year's Genius Summit. Although he had been surpassed by Gu Yijian and Xiong Qifeng this year and had lost the title of Proud Son of Heaven, there was no need to doubt his strength. Last year, Yi Yunlong already had the battle prowess of a 5th-stage martial artist. Now that a year had passed, not to mention that he could fight a 6th-stage martial artist, his strength should be at the top of the 5th-stage martial artists. Very few 5th-stage martial artists could contend against him. As for Wei Qingxian, she had only just entered the 5th-stage martial path. Although she had defeated Yi Yundai and Xiong Chikai consecutively, the majority of the martial artists of the younger generation were not optimistic about her chances in this battle. If her mid-grade martial technique reaches the perfection stage, I'm afraid Yi Yunlong might not be her match. Yi Xing's point of view was different from the other martial artists of the younger generation. Even he could rely on a mid-grade martial technique at the perfection stage to compete with Yi Yunlong. Wei Qingxian had already stepped into the 5th stage, and her inner strength had been refined into her flesh and blood. Compared to Yi Xing, she was only stronger and not weaker. As long as her mid-grade martial technique reached the perfection stage, she would definitely be able to defeat Yi Yunlong. Yi Xing could imagine how shocked the other martial artists of the younger generation would be when the results came out. If Wei Qingxian could win this battle, even if she was not a 6th-stage martial artist, she would be able to stand side by side with Gu Yijian and Xiong Qifeng and be respected as a proud daughter of heaven. The Arrow God is growing and needs nourishment. If you like the Arrow God, please log on to Qidian and vote for me. Chapter 51. Yi Yunlong's expression was somewhat ugly. Earlier on, Yi Xing's display of invincible might had already caused Yi Yunlong to be worried. With his strength, would Yi Xing have already caught up to him? However, it had only been a short while, and there was actually another rising star that threatened his position. Most importantly, this rising star actually dared to challenge him in front of the younger generation elites of the 3 great clans, in front of everyone's eyes. Yi Yunlong still remembered how glorious he was at last year's Genius Summit. And this year, his previous opponents had already surpassed him and disdained to attend the Genius Summit. Even the rising stars had already set him as a target to surpass. How could Yi Yunlong not feel sullen in his heart? His heart was stifled with anger. He must prove to everyone present that his title as the Heaven's Chosen Son of Heaven was not for nothing. Yi Yunlong stood up and walked to the empty space between the three pavilions, facing Wei Qingxian from afar. On the battlefield, the ugly expression on Yi Yunlong's face disappeared. His expression turned resolute and graceful as he said, "Wei Qingxian, if I make a move, I will not show mercy. I hope your strength is comparable to your sister's, otherwise. It's best if you admit defeat early." Wei Qingxian was not frightened by Yi Yunlong's words and said, "Go all out." But Yi Yunlong shouted and threw the landscape fan in his hand towards his seat. He took a deep breath and clenched both hands into fists, suddenly exerting all his strength. Rip! The clothes on Yi Yunlong's upper body were suddenly torn apart and shattered into pieces, revealing the well-proportioned muscles like a cheetah. If one didn't already know Yi Yunlong's character, they would definitely be shocked at this moment. Who would have thought that Yi Yunlong's graceful and elegant demeanor would have such powerful muscles on his body? Yi Yunlong's body surface was suffused with a layer of luster, as if his entire body was cast from bronze. Middle-grade body refining technique, bronze formula. Looking at Yi Yunlong's bronze-like skin, his bronze secret art had probably been cultivated to an extremely high level. As the proud son of heaven last year, Yi Yunlong naturally had some outstanding aspects. As early as last year, he had already cultivated the low-grade body refinement technique, green skin technique, to the perfection stage. This year, he had even cultivated the middle-grade body refinement technique, bronze technique, to the large success stage. With the bronze art at the large success stage, how strong was his physical body? He could completely sweep away those of the same level. Coupled with his profound inner strength, Yi Yunlong's strength was indeed very terrifying. Looking at Yi Yunlong, most of the younger generation elites felt fear in their hearts. Even if they were all peak level 5 martial artists, they still felt inferior to Yi Yunlong. In the face of Yi Yunlong, whose aura had greatly increased, Wei Qingxian remained fearless. She changed her gentle style and revealed a similarly domineering aura. Her clothes fluttered without any wind, and her entire person seemed to have transformed into a mountain. All the young elites were shocked. Wei Qingxian had also cultivated a body-tempering cultivation technique. Her physical body was extraordinary. Wei Qingxian cultivated the middle-grade body refinement technique, mountain technique. Looking at her aura, it was likely that her mountain technique had also been cultivated to the large success stage. Yi Yunlong's expression turned serious. His physical body was his forte, but the 14-year-old Wei Qingxian actually had a physical body that was not weaker than his. Roaring Tiger Fist. The longer one stood in the mountain technique, the heavier the mountain aura. Yi Yunlong roared and took the initiative to display the most ferocious middle-grade martial arts technique, Roaring Tiger Fist. The Roaring Tiger Fist's aura was ferocious, like a ferocious tiger released from its cage. Coupled with a strong physical body, its power would greatly increase. Roaring Tiger Fist. What surprised the crowd was that Wei Qingxian actually displayed the same Roaring Tiger Fist. Furthermore, her Roaring Tiger Fist's aura was even stronger than Yi Yunlong's, and the sound of the tiger's roar was even heavier. The Yi, Wei, and Xiong families all had many similar low-grade and middle-grade martial arts, and Roaring Tiger Fist was one of them. In the blink of an eye, Yi Yunlong and Wei Qingxian had already exchanged blows. Two fists collided, emitting a ripping sound. Pung pung pung. In the blink of an eye, the two of them continuously displayed Roaring Tiger Fist, clashing several times. Yi Yunlong's expression was horrified. He actually felt the strength coming from his opponent's fists. Compared to his own Roaring Tiger Fist, it was actually stronger and not weaker. Just 4 fists and Yi Yunlong had already retreated a step. On the 7th fist, Yi Yunlong had already retreated 5 steps. On the 10th fist, Yi Yunlong had already retreated 9 steps. Finally, when the 13th fist clashed, Yi Yunlong not only retreated, his body was directly sent flying. After landing, he retreated 7 to 8 steps, but he still could not stabilize his body and fell to the ground. The entire arena was silent. Most of the younger elites were dumbfounded. They completely did not expect that Yi Yunlong would be defeated by Wei Qingxian with absolute strength. Moreover, he only managed to withstand 13 fists from Wei Qingxian. A 14-year-old girl with merely an early 5th-level cultivation base, but with absolute strength, she defeated last year's proud son of heaven Yi Yunlong, who was at the peak 5th-level cultivation base. What kind of powerful combat strength was this, and what kind of heaven-defying potential was this? While the Ye family and Xiong family disciples were shocked, they could also confirm that the Wei family was in the limelight this time. With Wei Qingxuan's talent and potential, she could totally be recruited into the Purple Mountain Academy as a student of the Genius class. The Purple Mountain Academy's Genius class was an incredible place. It was known as the cradle of martial Dao masters and grandmasters. It was said that as long as a student entered the Genius class, the lowest achievement in the future would be to become a martial Dao master. There were even a number of students who could become martial Dao grandmasters. The reason why the Xiong family was recognized as the #1 martial arts family in Tiansong City was because the family's strength was only a secondary reason. Whether it was the Wei family or the Ye family, their strength was not much weaker than the Xiong family. The real reason was that the Xiong family had a descendant in the Purple Mountain Academy's Genius class. As long as that descendant of the Xiong family returned from the Purple Mountain Academy, it would be enough to threaten the balance of Tiansong City. If that descendant of the Xiong family could become a martial Dao grandmaster, then without a doubt, the Xiong family's level would completely surpass the Wei and Yi families. Wei Qingxian defeated Yi Yunlong, pushing this year's Genius Summit to the climax. The strongest disciples of the Ye family and Xiong family had already been defeated. Although the Wei family still had Wei Qingyan who had not appeared, it was already meaningless. Therefore, this year's Genius Summit ended after Wei Qingxian defeated Yi Yunlong. Wei Qingxian became the person with the most glory in this year's Genius Summit. Even though Wei Qingxian was not a martial artist at the 6th level of the martial Dao and her cultivation was still quite a distance away from the 6th level of the martial Dao, she was still crowned by the younger elites of Tiansong City with the title of Heaven's Proud Daughter. Originally, Yi Xing's performance at the Genius Summit could be considered as shocking. However, he was completely overshadowed by Wei Qingxian, who had heaven-defying potential and was in the limelight. As a result, Yi Xing's powerful battle results did not cause a stir among the younger generation of Tiansong City. Most people's attention was attracted by Wei Qingxian. Yi Xing returned to the Yi family and kept a very low profile. Every day, he would cultivate the revolving arrow technique at the archery range. The end of the Genius Summit meant that the hunting competition between the three families was about to begin. In the Azure Cloud Mountain range, archery was of great use. He wanted to cultivate his archery skills to a higher level. Very quickly, the three families decided on the date of the hunting competition. It was set to be the 6th day after the Genius Summit. Yi Xing cultivated his archery skills every day. 5 days later, he finally managed to cultivate the revolving arrow technique to perfection before the hunting competition. In the entire Azure Sky City, whether it was the older generation or the younger generation, there was not a single archer who had achieved perfection in the revolving arrow technique. Yi Xing was the first and the only one. Achieving perfection in the revolving arrow technique made Yi Xing feel very confident about this hunting competition. In terms of hunting ferocious beasts in the Azure Cloud Mountain range, who in Azure Sky City could compare to him? Even if it was Gu Yijian and Xiong Qifeng who were at the 6th level of the martial Dao, Yi Xing was 100% confident that he could surpass them in hunting ferocious beasts. The hunting competition was related to the conflicts between the Ye family, the Wei family, and the Xiong family for the past year. The family with the 3rd place and the family with the 2nd place for the past year had to make a full concession. The family with the 3rd and 2nd place and the family with the 1st place for the past year had to make a full concession. The three families had accumulated a lot of conflicts over the past year. There were many benefits involved. Whichever family won would be able to reap great benefits. The other side would suffer great losses. Yi Xing was where he was today because of the super brain. However, the martial arts he learned in the Yi family was also a big reason. As long as there was a chance, Yi Xing wanted to repay the Yi family. This hunting competition was an opportunity. After a night of rest, Yi Xing woke up the next day full of energy. Wearing a pair of black and gold silk gloves and a bow on his shoulder, he walked out of his independent courtyard. Today was the day of the hunting competition held by the 3 families. Each family had 30 spots. No matter which family it was, the number of elite disciples would exceed 30. Therefore, the juniors who participated in the hunting competition were all elite disciples of the 3 families. Yi Xing and the other 29 elite disciples were personally led by the patriarch of the Yi family, Yi Wendao. They left Azure Sky City and headed towards the Azure Cloud Mountain Range. Outside the Azure Cloud Mountain Range, they met up with the people from the Wei and Xiong families. The hunting competition was related to the conflicts of the past year. Therefore, the 3 families placed great importance on it. All of them were led by their patriarchs. The Ye family was led by Yi Wendao, the Wei family was led by Wei Jingguang, and the Xiong family was led by Xiong Baolong. The members of the 3 families gathered together. Including the juniors who participated in the hunting competition, as well as some elders and attendants who came along, the total number of people was more than 100. This scared the ferocious beasts in the Azure Cloud Mountain Range and made them flee. A new exciting event is about to unfold. Looking for recommendation votes. Chapter 52. Brother Jingguang, I heard that the Wei clan has produced a genius with heaven-defying potential, Wei Qingxian. She has a high chance of entering the Purple Mountain Academy's gifted class. Congratulations! The relationship between the Ye family and the Wei clan was relatively friendly. When the 3 clan leaders met, Yi Wendao immediately congratulated Wei Jingguang. Wei Jingguang smiled from the bottom of his heart and said, That's good. I heard that the Ye family also has a junior called Yi Xing. He's not bad either. Yi Wendao smiled and sighed. Yi Xing's strength is indeed extraordinary. Unfortunately, his aptitude is a little lacking. There's no hope of entering the gifted class of the Purple Mountain Academy. Wei Jingguang said, even if he can't enter the gifted class, there's still hope for the ordinary class. I heard that Yi Xing is a martial arts genius. If he's lucky enough to enter the ordinary class of the Purple Mountain Academy, he'll have great achievements in the future. Among the 3 martial arts clans in Tiansong City, the Xiong clan was the strongest. The Wei and Yi clans had always joined forces to fight against the Xiong clan. While Yi Wendao and Wei Jingguang were chatting, Xiong T-Rex was left hanging at the side. Both of them ignored him. Naturally, Xiong T-Rex wouldn't stick his warm face to someone else's cold butt. While Yi Wendao and Wei Jingguang were chatting, he stood at the side without saying a word. 2-star Destiny Realm. To be able to cultivate to the 4th level of the martial path is already a great fortune. What else can he achieve in the future? Be recruited into the ordinary class of the Purple Mountain Academy? Can Xiong Baodan let him live until that day? Xiong T-Rex only laughed coldly in his heart. Of course, he wouldn't show any expression on his face. After Yi Wendao and Wei Jingguang exchanged a few words, Xiong T-Rex said coldly, Are we still competing in the hunt? If you don't dare to compete, you can admit defeat early to avoid embarrassing yourself later. In this hunt, among the younger generation of the 3 clans, only Xiong Qifeng from the Xiong clan was at the 6th level of the martial path. He had hopes of killing a savage beast equivalent to a 6th level martial artist. The higher the level of the ferocious beast, the higher the score. Every level would increase the score by 3 times. In other words, killing a ferocious beast that was equivalent to killing 3 ferocious beasts that were equivalent to killing a 5th-stage martial artist. Therefore, the Xiong family had a huge advantage in this hunting competition. Xiong tyrannical dragons saw the 1st place as his in the bag. As long as they obtained 1st place, then in this 1 year, the Wei family, Ye family, and Xiong family would have to give way to each other. Not only would this allow the Xiong family to reap great benefits, it would also allow the Xiong family's reputation to soar, stabilizing their position as the #1 martial arts family in Celestial Firmament City. The competition hasn't started yet. It's not certain who will win or lose. Hunting ferocious beasts isn't a matter of cultivation. If one's archery skills are high enough, a LV5 martial artist might be able to kill a ferocious beast equivalent to a LV6 martial artist. Yi Wenyan and Wei Jingguang said one after the other. Even though the Xiong clan had a great advantage at this moment, they would never boost the morale of others and destroy their own prestige. Hunting a ferocious beast equivalent to a level 6 martial artist? The younger generation of the Wei and Yi clans, did they have such attainments in archery? Tyrannical Bear laughed disdainfully and said, "Since you guys are so confident, then don't be so long-winded. Let the hunt begin. Let us Xiong, Wei, and Yi clans determine the victor." Not long after the family elders repeated the rules and time of the hunt, the younger generation of the Yi, Wei, and Xiong clans walked towards the Azure Cloud Mountain Range. The hunt had officially begun. The time limit was 10 days, and the winner would be determined by the total score of the younger generation of the three clans. The Azure Cloud Mountain Range was huge, with no end in sight. There was a sea of ferocious beasts within, and the strength of the ferocious beasts varied. The weaker ones were equivalent to martial disciples, while the stronger ones were equivalent to martial grandmasters. It was even said that in the depths of the Azure Cloud Mountain Range, there were even stronger ferocious beasts that were even more terrifying than martial grandmasters of the 9th stage. Their strength was comparable to the legendary martial saints. Ferocious beasts spent most of their time in their territory and would not venture out of the Azure Cloud Mountain Range. However, there were exceptions. Sometimes, ferocious beasts would rush out of the Azure Cloud Mountain Range in groups, causing great destruction to the human world. This was the so-called beast tide. Normally, only when there were too many ferocious beasts would it be easy to cause a beast tide. Therefore, the hunt had a deeper meaning than the cold, and that was to reduce the number of ferocious beasts within the Azure Cloud Mountain Range. Not only Azure Sky City, as long as it was a city near the Azure Cloud Mountain Range, every year at different times, they would organize a hunt to reduce the number of ferocious beasts within the Azure Cloud Mountain Range as much as possible. The Yi, Wei, and Xiong clans each had 30 elite disciples participating in the hunting competition. For the sake of avoiding them from bumping into each other in the Ascendant Cloud Mountain Range and causing a battle, the junior elites of the three great clans entered the Ascendant Cloud Mountain Range from different directions. Compared to the boundless Azure Cloud Mountain Range, a few dozen people were simply too insignificant. Entering was like a stone sinking into the sea, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. The three clans sent out a portion of their people to wait here, while the Patriarch brought the majority of the people back to Azure Sky City. After 10 days, they would return here to witness the results of the hunt. With a large number of martial artists entering the Azure Cloud Mountain Range, the surrounding ferocious beasts were all frightened and ran away. But as the teams ventured deeper, in less than a day, the figures of ferocious beasts could be seen again. The younger generation of the Ye family was led by Yi Yunlong. He directed the Ye family's younger generation to stop, saying, "There are already ferocious beasts nearby. Everyone spread out and hunt. You can hunt alone, or you can form a team." With 30 elite disciples gathered together, before they even got close to the ferocious beasts would sense the aura of a large number of humans and would be scared away from afar. Therefore, when hunting ferocious beasts, they had to split up. Even if they formed a team, the number of people couldn't exceed 5. With Yi Yunlong's words, the younger generation elites began to look for teammates. The Azure Cloud Mountain Range was not a good place. Hunting ferocious beasts alone was very dangerous. Most of them were willing to form a team and hunt ferocious beasts together. "Yi Xing, do you want to hunt alone, or do you want to form a team?" Yi Yunwan had been walking beside Yi Xing the entire time, asking at this time. If Yi Xing was willing to form a team, Yi Yunwan would obviously want to go with Yi Xing. Yi Xing shook his head and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, senior sister Yunwan. I plan to hunt alone." Yi Yunwan's expression was somewhat disappointed as she said, "That's true. With your archery skills, you'll be like a fish in water in the Azure Cloud Mountain Range. It's most suitable for you to hunt alone." Yi Xing could feel the change in Yi Yunjuan's attitude towards him. Unfortunately, Yi Xing was wholeheartedly focused on martial arts. He wanted to reach the peak and cultivate to become a martial saint. His goal was to become a peerless expert. Right now, he didn't have any thoughts of romance with Yi Yunwan. Furthermore, Yi Yunwan was right. Yi Xing's archery skills were superb. In the Azure Cloud Mountain range, it was most suitable for him to hunt alone. Anyone who was with him wouldn't be able to help. They would only be a burden. Yi Xing didn't form a team with Yi Yunwan. Yi Yunjue, who was nearby, noticed this. However, he didn't ask Yi Yunwan if she wanted to form a team with him. Instead, he took the lead and left the crowd, quickly disappearing into the dense forest. It was obvious that he also wanted to hunt alone. Yi Xing rejected Yi Yunwan and left the crowd. He walked alone into the dense forest at the side. At this time, someone called out to him, "Senior brother Yi Xing?" Yi Xing stopped in his tracks. He knew who had spoken from the voice. Without turning his head, he said coldly, "What's the matter?" Yi Yunkong quickly walked over from behind and circled in front of Yi Xing. He said, "Senior brother Yi Xing, I've offended you in the past. Today, I apologize to you. Senior brother Yi Xing, you're a magnanimous person. Please don't lower yourself to my level." Yi Xing revealed a trace of surprise. He didn't expect Yi Yunkong to say something like that. Whether Yi Yunkong was sincere or not, Yi Xing didn't want to have anything to do with him. He said indifferently, "I'm not going to lower myself to your level." Yi Yunkong's expression became emotional. He said, "I knew it. Senior brother Yi Xing wouldn't take it to heart. Senior brother Yi Xing, I'm willing to be your lackey. Please bring me along to hunt." "I like to hunt alone," Yi Xing said indifferently. He circled around Yunkong and walked into the dense forest at the side. Yi Yunkong turned around and watched Yi Xing's figure disappear from his sight. His eyes narrowed, revealing a vicious gaze. After Yi Xing left the crowd, he continued to go deeper into the Emerald Cloud Mountains. His revolving arrow technique was at the perfect level. He could kill all mid-level dire beasts. Naturally, he would look for the best mid-level dire beasts to hunt. As he walked in the Emerald Cloud Mountains, Yi Xing used his super brain to scan his surroundings. He also used his gaze to observe the distance, avoiding the dire beasts that he was too lazy to hunt. After walking for a short distance, Yi Xing realized that he was being followed. The person who was following him was Yi Yunjue. Yi Yunjue's archery skills were superb. He had entered the Emerald Cloud Mountains many times to hunt dire beasts. He had an extremely brilliant tracking skill. He was the first to leave the crowd. In reality, he didn't go too far. He was watching Yi Xing from the side. When he saw that Yi Xing was moving alone, he secretly followed him. Yi Yunjue was very confident in his tracking skill. He hated Yi Xing to the core and wished that Yi Xing would die. So, he followed Yi Xing from behind, looking for an opportunity. Yi Xing knew that Yi Yunjue was following him from behind. He quickened his pace and distanced himself from the Ye family's young elites. Yi Yunjue's eyes shone with a vicious light. Yi Xing's actions were exactly what he wanted. The reason why he didn't kill him directly was because he was not far from the Ye family's elite disciples. The Ye family punished their disciples severely for killing each other. If the fact that he killed Yi Xing was exposed, Yi Yunjue would not be able to live. So, he had to wait. He had to wait until Yi Xing was far enough away from the Ye family's elite disciples before he killed him. Half a day later, Yi Xing was already far away from the Ye family's elite disciples. Yi Yunjue finally made his move. Yi Yunjue was about 400 steps away from Yi Xing. He knocked an arrow and drew his bow. It was aimed at the back of Yi Xing's head. "Kid, behave yourself in your next life. There are some people you can't afford to offend." Yi Yunjue thought to himself. In that instant, the arrow left the bowstring and streaked across the sky, heading straight for the back of Yi Xing's head. The sound of the arrow piercing through the air could be heard, but the speed of the arrow was almost as fast as the sound. Yi Xing heard the sound of the arrow piercing through the air. The arrow was already at the back of his head. In that instant, Yi Xing turned his body and a black palm suddenly grabbed at him. It was a black glove with gold threads. Inside the glove was a green palm. When the arrow was about 3 inches away from Yi Xing's face, it was caught by the palm. The impact of the arrow was not completely caught by Yi Xing, but it still slowed down the arrow. At that moment, Yi Xing tilted his head and took a step to the side. The arrow that was supposed to be a sure kill shot missed its target. It continued to fly forward for about a foot before it was completely caught by Yi Xing's palm. Only the tail of the arrow was vibrating slightly. 400 steps away, Yi Yunjue's eyes were instantly filled with fear. I'm busy in my hometown, and I'm writing 2 books at the same time. So, I'm a bit overwhelmed. I'm sorry. This week's Archer God is recommended by Sanjiang Feng. It's a very good recommendation. Brothers who like Archer Gods, please come to Sanjiang channel and vote for Supreme Archer God. Thank you. Tomorrow is Monday. I'll continue to write. I'll try to update the first chapter by midnight. Please support me. Chapter 53. Yi Xing took out a bow. He knocked the arrow that he had just grabbed and shot it. He would return an arrow to whoever shot him. This was Yi Xing's principle. When the arrow was pointed at Yi Yunjue, he finally recovered from his shock and realized that he was in mortal danger. As the 4th most elite disciple of the Ye family, Yi Yunjue was naturally not weak. As an expert archer, his reaction was also top-notch. At that moment, Yi Yunjue's body leaped backward like a monkey. Middle-grade Qinggong, agile ape maneuver. In an instant, Yi Yunjue retreated into the dense forest, trying to use the cover of the trees to escape. At the same time, Yi Xing released the bowstring. The arrow left the bowstring in an instant, leaving behind a twisted, cold light in the air. Yi Xing had used the spinning arrow technique. The trajectory of the arrow was not a straight line, but a curve. The trees between Yi Xing and him were nothing under Yi Xing's arrow. How fast was the arrow shot by a strong bow with 1 cauldron strength and the flying revolving arrow technique? In the blink of an eye, the arrow had flown to within 100 steps of Yi Yunjue. It spun in the air and shot in the opposite direction. It was aimed at Yi Yunjue. At the same time, Yi Yunjue was using the agile ape maneuver and leaping forward, almost colliding with the arrow. Whether it was the speed of the arrow or Yi Yunjue's speed, they were both very fast. In an instant they came into contact. Yi Yunjue did not even have time to react before the arrow pierced his heart. The terrifying power contained in the arrow caused Yi Yunjue's body to fly backward. With a ding, the arrow was nailed to a tree trunk that was as thick as an adult's waist. Yi Yunjue was 10 meters away from the ground. The arrow had pierced through his heart. He hung there, his eyes filled with disbelief. Perfect. Spinning arrow technique? Even at the moment of his death, Yi Yunjue could not believe that Yi Xing's revolving arrow technique had reached perfection. Even if the flying revolving arrow technique was at the Great Mastery realm, it could only change the direction of the arrow up, down, left, and right. It could not change the direction of the arrow. Only the Great Mastery realm of the flying revolving arrow technique could make the arrow shoot back. However, even the older generation of godly archers in Celestial Azure City did not have such attainments in the Great Perfection realm of the whirlwind arrow technique. Therefore, even in death, Yi Yunjue could not believe that this was the truth. Yi Xing quickly arrived below Yi Yunjue's corpse. He jumped up and pulled out the arrow, causing Yi Yunjue's corpse to fall to the ground. Picking up Yi Xing's corpse, Yi Xing used the flying swan technique and hurried deeper into the Blue Cloud Mountains. The disciples of the Ye family were not allowed to fight, but killing was strictly forbidden. In order to prevent unnecessary trouble, Yi Xing had no choice but to dispose of Yi Yunjue's body. The flying swan technique at the Great Perfection realm was naturally very fast. Before long, Yi Xing had crossed several mountain peaks. Soon after, in a valley, Yi Xing encountered a mid-level dire beast, iron-head leopard. Iron-head leopards were relatively common amongst mid-level dire beasts. They were stronger than most 4th-stage martial artists. Yi Xing's cultivation was at the peak of the 4th stage, only half a step away from the 5th stage. This made the iron-head leopard cautious. The fur on its head stood on end as it glared at Yi Xing angrily. When he was in the 2nd stage of the martial path, Yixing had hunted down an iron-head leopard for the sake of the red blood Ganoderma. The current Yixing could easily kill it without using a bow and arrow. Naturally, Yixing was not interested in hunting it down. After throwing Yi Yunjue's body over, Yixing used the flying swan technique to leave. The iron-head leopard did not stop Yixing. When Yixing disappeared, it immediately pounced on Yi Yunjue's body. Yi Yunjue would never have expected that he would end up like this. He would die under his own arrow and be eaten by a dire beast. He had always thought that he was someone Yixing could not afford to offend. Little did he know that Yixing was the one he could not afford to offend. The consequences of angering Yixing were very, very serious. Unfortunately, Yi Yunjue had not expected or seen this. Time could not reverse. He no longer had the chance to start over. Instead, he had disappeared from this world. He no longer existed between heaven and earth. After dealing with Yi Yunjue, Yixing continued to venture deeper into the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. Normal mid-grade dire beasts could not attract Yixing's interest. Only top-grade dire beasts, which were equivalent to stage 6 martial artists, were Yixing's targets. With Yixing's archery skills, killing top-grade dire beasts was not a problem at all. As long as he did not encounter any high-grade dire beasts, Yixing would be able to do whatever he wanted in the outskirts of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range as long as he had a bow and arrow in hand. In the Emerald Cloud Mountain range, Yixing's super brains ability was once again displayed. Not only did it avoid many dire beasts that Yixing was too lazy to kill, it could also discover precious medicinal herbs along the way. Although Yixing's scanning range was limited, and the range of his X-ray vision was even more limited, there were still many blind spots in the forest. However, Yixing's chances of finding precious medicinal herbs were 10 times, or even 10 times, higher than a normal person's. In the Emerald Cloud Mountain range, a normal martial artist might not be able to find a single middle-grade medicinal herb after a few days, but Yixing could find multiple middle-grade medicinal herbs in a day. If Yixing happened to pass by a lot of medicinal herbs nearby, it was normal for him to find 10 of them in a day. Yixing continued to move deeper into the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. Along the way, Yixing would not let go of any middle-grade medicinal herbs. If there were no dire beasts guarding, Yixing would directly harvest them. If there were dire beasts guarding, Yixing would shoot arrows from afar and cut off their left ears before harvesting the herbs. Today, Yixing's luck was not bad. He killed a total of 6 middle-grade dire beasts and harvested 8 middle-grade medicinal herbs. To be able to harvest so many middle-grade medicinal herbs was mainly because Yixing had been going deep into the Emerald Cloud Mountain range, deep into the territory of the middle-grade dire beasts. Otherwise, if he wanted to find a middle-grade medicinal herb in the outskirts of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range, it would not be an easy task. These 8 middle-grade medicinal herbs were not cheap. One of them was a healing herb, one of them was very useful for raising one's cultivation base, and the other 6 were medicinal herbs that greatly nourished one's vitality. They were very useful for cultivating body refining techniques. With these 6 medicinal herbs that greatly nourished his vitality, Yixing was certain that he would be able to cultivate the low-grade body refining technique, green skin secret technique, to the perfection realm tonight. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, Yixing was preparing to find a place to spend the night when he made a new discovery. He came to the top of a cliff. When he looked down the cliff, his eyes suddenly lit up. He saw that in the valley below the cliff, there was a stalk of medicinal herb that was about a foot tall, shining with starlight. It was the starlight grass. Yixing was overjoyed. Medicinal herbs were very important to martial artists. Yixing had specially learned about medicinal herbs and memorized it in his super brain. Naturally, he could recognize the starlight grass. The starlight grass was different from other medicinal herbs. It did not have grades, only age. Its medicinal properties could be low-grade, middle-grade, or even high-grade. What made Yixing even happier was that the starlight grass was a medicinal herb that contained a large amount of star energy. It was simply a natural star-accumulating pill. Regardless of whether it was a cultivator or a beast, the starlight grass was an excellent medicinal herb to raise one's cultivation base. Yixing also had a middle-grade medicinal herb that could raise one's cultivation base. However, it did not even have a fifth of the effect of the starlight grass. Yi Xing's cultivation base was already at the peak of the 4th stage. He was only half a step away from the 5th stage of the martial path. This stalk of starlight grass had a total of nearly 100 starlight points. In other words, it was close to 100 years old. It was equivalent to a peak middle-grade medicinal herb. It was even close to becoming a high-grade medicinal herb. If he could obtain this stalk of starlight grass, Yi Xing's cultivation base would break through to the 5th stage easily. Yi Xing's astrology was not ordinary. Furthermore, the superbrain could improve his cultivation method. Therefore, his cultivation speed was very fast. However, his heavenly fate realm was only at the 2-star level. Therefore, every time he broke through, the difficulty would increase. If he broke through normally, Yi Xing would not be able to step into the 5th stage of the martial path without at least half a month's time. However, if he had this stalk of starlight grass, he would be able to break through tonight. With such a clear contrast, Yi Xing decided that he had to obtain this stalk of starlight grass no matter what. Yi Xing carefully checked the area below the cliff. Finally, he found the existence of a beast in a patch of grass. It was a black python. He could only see the shadow of the black python. However, when Yi Xing used the scanning function to scan the area, he was shocked. The length of the black python was actually more than 13 meters. Its body was as thick as an adult's thigh, and the black scales on its body were like a layer of armor. It was a peak mid-level vicious beast, the black-scaled python. The black-scaled python scales had a very high defense. It could block swords and sabers. Furthermore, it was very fast and agile. Even a 6th-stage martial artist would find it difficult to be its opponent. It was considered an overlord among mid-level vicious beasts. However, the black-scaled python's strength lay in its body. As long as Yi Xing stood at a distance, the black-scaled python's strength would not be of any use. Yi Xing took out the cauldron bow and knocked 3 sound-breaking arrows. Standing on the cliff, he shot the arrows at the black-scaled python from a distance of more than 300 steps. Just as the 3 sound-breaking arrows left the bow, Yi Xing took out another 3 and continued to shoot. The black-scaled python occupied this area and no mid-level vicious beast dared to provoke it. Now that it was being attacked, it immediately twisted its huge body and charged at Yi Xing. However, even if the black-scaled python's scales were difficult to damage with swords and sabers, it was difficult for arrows to penetrate them. Especially since Yi Xing's revolving arrow technique had reached perfection and he was shooting with the cauldron bow, the power of the arrows was even more terrifying. Yi Xing shot 4 arrows consecutively, a total of 12 arrows. Soon, the black-scaled python could not hold on any longer and started to twist on the ground. 3 arrows bounced off the scales, 6 arrows pierced through the scales, causing light injuries, and 3 arrows pierced through the scales, causing serious injuries. When the black-scaled python was completely dead, Yi Xing confirmed it with another arrow before coming down from the cliff. The black-scaled python did not have ears. Although it was a peak mid-level vicious beast, it was unable to obtain a score. However, Yi Xing did not feel it was a pity at all. This starlight grass was much more valuable than a peak mid-level vicious beast. Yi Xing picked the starlight grass and was extremely happy. Tonight was the night to break through to the 5th stage of the martial path. Monday, please recommend me. Chapter 54. Night was the time when the beasts were active. When the sky turned completely dark, Yi Xing was already in the cave that he had dug. Yi Xing sat cross-legged. After calming his mind, he took out 6 mid-grade herbs that could replenish blood. He planned to cultivate the green skin secret technique to perfection before using the starlight grass to raise his cultivation to the 5th stage of the martial path. The 5th stage of the martial path was to refine the inner strength into the flesh and blood. It was also a process of strengthening the body. The body of a 5th stage martial artist was not much different from the body of a 5th stage martial artist. Therefore, if he first cultivated to the 5th stage before cultivating the green skin secret technique, his body could only reach the perfection stage of the green skin secret technique. However, If he cultivated the green skin secret technique to perfection and strengthened his body before refining the inner strength into the flesh, his body would have another chance to strengthen. Compared to breaking through to the 5th stage and then cultivating the green skin secret technique to perfection, his body would be much stronger. After eating one of the mid-grade herbs, Yixing used the green skin secret technique to let his flesh absorb the nutrients and strengthen his body. Yixing's green skin secret art was modified by the supercomputer based on the cultivation methods of many low-grade body refining techniques. It allowed the body to absorb nutrients better and cultivate faster. As time passed, Yixing's body was constantly strengthening. An hour later, Yixing consumed the 2nd middle-grade medicinal herb that greatly replenished his qi and blood. 2 hours later, he consumed the 3rd. About 6 hours later, Yixing's green skin technique had already reached perfection before he had even consumed the 6th mid-grade medicinal herb that could greatly replenish his qi and blood. Although the green skin secret art also strengthened the muscles, the most important thing was to strengthen the skin. The perfect bone burst fist strengthened the bones. Now, whether it was Yixing's inner bones or outer skin, they had all reached an extremely tough state. With the combination of inner and outer skin, his body's foundation was very solid. Even if they were both in the 4th stage of the martial path and had cultivated the green skin secret technique to perfection, their body's strength would not be comparable to Yixing's. After cultivating the green skin secret technique to perfection, Yixing still consumed the remaining middle-grade medicinal herb that greatly replenished his qi and blood. There was no end to the cultivation of the physical body. Once a middle-grade body tempering technique was cultivated to perfection, there was still another middle-grade body tempering technique. Yixing's middle-grade body refinement technique was the bronze formula. This was a kind of body refining cultivation method that focused on the whole body's muscles, bones, blood, flesh, and skin. However, in terms of local cultivation, it couldn't be compared to a specialized body refining cultivation method. For example, in terms of bone cultivation, it couldn't compare to the perfect bone explosive fist. In terms of skin cultivation, it couldn't compare to the green skin secret art. However, the bronze secret art could unify and coordinate the power of Yixing's entire body and unleash an even greater power. According to the green skin secret art, Yixing's physical body was already at the perfection stage. However, according to the bronze secret art, it was not yet at the great success stage. The cultivation of a body refining cultivation method was not only affected by talent, but also by resources. As long as there were enough medicinal herbs to replenish one's qi and blood, even if one's talent was average, they could still cultivate the body refining cultivation method to a high level. A middle-grade medicinal herb was like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood for the bronze secret art. It was far from enough. It only brought the bronze secret art a small step closer to the great success stage. Feeling the power coursing through his body, Yixing grinned. It was time to raise his cultivation base. It was already late at night, but Yixing was not tired at all. He calmed his mind and waited for his emotions to calm down. Then he consumed the starlight grass. The starlight grass contained a rich power of the stars. Yixing immediately felt it. The Xianxia art, a high-grade technique, began to circulate. The 10 meridians in his body began to absorb the power of the stars. The superbrain scanned his dantian. The 4 rings shone brightly. Soon, a 5th ring pattern that was almost invisible appeared outside the 4 rings. As it absorbed the power of the stars from the starlight grass, the 5th ring pattern gradually became corporeal. Half an hour later, the 5th ring completely solidified. Then, it emitted starlight and turned into the 5th ring. Yixing's cultivation had broken through and stepped into the 5th stage of the martial path. At this time, the inner strength that had already filled his 10 meridians was no longer suppressed by his cultivation. It found an outlet. Like a broken dam, the inner strength rushed out of his meridians and merged into his flesh. The 3 stages of the martial path, the 4th stage, the 5th stage, and the 6th stage of the martial path all had different areas of inner strength. For the 4th stage of the martial path, the inner strength was only in the meridians. For the 5th stage of the martial path, the inner strength was refined into the flesh. For the sixth stage of the martial path, the inner strength was refined into the skin. When one reached the seventh stage of the martial path, the inner strength could penetrate the skin and injure people from a distance. After breaking through to the fifth stage of the martial path, Yixing still had a lot of the starlight grass in his body. He continued to circulate the Xianxia art to refine and absorb it. He used the inner strength to strengthen his flesh and consolidate his cultivation of the fifth stage of the martial path. When the starlight grass was completely absorbed, Yixing's cultivation of the fifth stage of the martial path was already very stable. He was not too far away from the middle stage of the fifth stage. Yixing was overjoyed. In this hunting competition, no matter the outcome, he would be the biggest winner. With the cultivation of the fifth stage of the martial path, the green skin secret technique, various martial techniques, and movement techniques, Yixing was already confident that he could compete with a sixth stage martial path cultivator. Among the younger generation of Celestial Azure City, even if he was not the number one, he was not far from it. If he could cultivate the bronze secret technique to perfection, then Yixing was completely confident that he could defeat Gu Yijian and Xiong Qifeng, these two geniuses who had already stepped into the sixth stage of the martial path half a year ago. My cultivation has reached the fifth stage. Hunting peak mid-level beasts is even easier. In this hunting competition, I will kill more peak mid-level beasts. I don't believe that the Ye family won't be able to get first place. Yixing thought to himself. At this time, it was already the second half of the night. He pondered in the cave for a while before falling asleep. The next morning, Yixing had already woken up. Although he did not sleep much, he was full of energy and was full of fighting spirit. He felt that his body was full of strength. Yixing moved away the huge boulder blocking the entrance of the cave and walked out of the cave. He breathed in the fresh air of the forest and a happy smile hung on his face. In just one night, his cultivation had already risen to the fifth stage of the martial path. The green skin secret technique had also been cultivated to perfection. Yixing's mood was naturally very good. The real hunt begins today. Yixing thought to himself. With a cauldron bow in hand, he took large strides forward and continued to walk deeper into the Azure Cloud Mountain range. Yesterday, Yixing's main goal was to hurry along. He only killed beasts when he saw herbs. Today, his main goal was to kill beasts. His target was a peak mid-level beast that was equivalent to a sixth stage martial path cultivator. Whoosh! The arrow left the bowstring and broke through the air, emitting a loud sound. In the blink of an eye, 500 steps in front of Yixing, a saber-toothed tiger suddenly fell to the ground and convulsed. The saber-toothed tiger had been hit by the arrow and had suffered a fatal injury. When the saber-toothed tiger stopped convulsing, Yixing added another arrow. After confirming that it was completely dead, he neatly went to the saber-toothed tiger's side and cut off its left ear. This was a peak mid-level beast that was equivalent to a sixth stage martial path cultivator. However, it could not block Yixing's arrow. With the increase in Yixing's cultivation, his inner qi had become stronger, and the power of his arrows had also increased. Even if he were to encounter the overlord of mid-level vicious beasts, the dark-scaled python, Yixing would only need 3 to 5 arrows to kill it. The saber-toothed tiger's death was just a microcosm of Yixing's hunting of fierce beasts. He walked in the Azure Cloud Mountain range like a king of the jungle. As long as it was not a group of fierce beasts, it was basically hard to escape Yixing's shooting. In just half a day, Yixing had already hunted more than 10 mid-level fierce beasts. More than half of them were peak mid-level fierce beasts equivalent to sixth stage martial path cultivators. The rest of the fierce beasts also had the strength of a fifth stage martial path cultivator. At noon, Yixing, who was already deep in the Azure Cloud Mountain range, suddenly became vigilant. He actually encountered another martial artist in the depths of the Azure Cloud Mountain range. Furthermore, it was not a junior elite participating in the hunting competition, but a middle-aged man over 40 years old. This was a little strange. During the 10 days when the Yi, Wei, and Xiong family clans were holding their hunting competition, Azure Cloud City's martial artists were forbidden from entering the Azure Cloud Mountain range. Azure Cloud City's martial artists did not dare to go against the three great family clans. Then, this middle-aged man was either a martial artist from another city who had trekked a long way into the Azure Cloud mountain range. Or he was a Azure Cloud City martial artist who had disobeyed the three great family clans' orders and entered the Azure Cloud mountain range with a motive. The area Yixing was in had many peak mid-level fierce beasts roaming about. Even if a sixth-stage martial artist came, they would also have to be careful. If there was a mistake, they could easily become food for the demonic beasts. Since the middle-aged man dared to come here, he was clearly not an ordinary martial artist. Yixing did not wish to meet him. Seeing that the middle-aged man was heading in his direction, Yixing deliberately changed direction and walked in another direction. After walking for a while, Yixing used his gaze to look behind him when he turned around. He discovered that the middle-aged man had also changed direction and was heading in his direction. This made Yixing a little wary. He executed the flying swan art and sped up to leave. When the middle-aged man behind also executed his qinggong and sped up to chase after him, Yixing understood that this middle-aged man was coming for him. This was already the depths of the Azure Cloud mountain range. Ordinary sixth-stage martial artists would not dare to come here. Yixing could be sure that among the younger elites, no one would know his whereabouts. However, if no one provided him with his whereabouts, how could this middle-aged man find him? The Azure Cloud mountain range was boundless. It was extremely vast. To find a person in it was like finding a needle in the sea. There must be a reason. Yixing did not have time to think about the reason. The middle-aged man who was chasing after him was actually much faster than Yixing. The distance between the two of them was quickly shortening. Yixing's flying swan art had already been cultivated to perfection. Even if it was a sixth-stage martial arts elder who also executed a middle-grade qinggong at perfection, he would not be much faster than him. However, this middle-aged man's speed was much faster than his. This meant that the other party's inner strength was definitely terrifyingly strong. It was much more vigorous than a sixth-stage martial artist. Could it be? Yixing had a bad feeling in his heart. When the middle-aged man approached the scanning range, Yixing immediately scanned the middle-aged man's figure into the super brain. Even though he had expected it, Yixing was still shocked. This middle-aged man was actually a LV7 Martial Dao Master. This morning he rushed to the click-through list. This morning he was on the recommendation list. Both lists, brothers, you are awesome and powerful. However, in the afternoon, the click-through list was blown up. The recommendation list was also blown up. What a tragedy! Brothers, can we rush back? Requesting a recommendation ticket. Requesting a click. Thank you. Chapter 55. There were 9 levels of the martial path, and there was a big gap between each level. Among them, the gap between Martial Path Level 4 and Martial Path Level 7 was the biggest. Martial Path Level 4 produced inner strength in the body, which was fundamentally different from a martial disciple. They were true martial artists. Martial Path Level 7 had extremely dense inner strength, which could leave the body to injure others. They were fundamentally different from ordinary martial artists and were called Martial Dao Masters. Just like how a Level 3 martial disciple could not withstand a single blow from a Level 4 martial artist, a Level 6 martial artist could not withstand a single blow from a Level 7 martial artist. Martial Dao Masters could use their inner strength to injure others and could kill enemies several feet away. If a Level 6 martial artist could not even get close to a Martial Dao Master, how could they fight against a Martial Dao Master? With Yixing's current cultivation, with a bow and arrow in hand, even if a peak Level 6 martial artist came, he was not afraid at all. He was confident that he could kill them with the bow and arrow in his hand. However, facing a Level 7 Martial Dao Master, Yixing had no confidence at all. In Tiansong City, a Level 7 Martial Dao Master stood at the peak of existence. The number of Martial Dao Masters in the 3 big families and the City Lord's mansion added up did not exceed 2 hands. As for Level 6 martial artists, even if they were elders of the 3 great clans, or even patriarchs of some martial arts aristocratic families, there were still quite a number of them. There were definitely no less than 100 of them in Celestial Azure City. Just from the comparison of numbers, it could be seen that martial Dao masters were rare. Out of 10 level 6 martial artists, there might not be a level 7 martial Dao master. Therefore, when he confirmed that the middle-aged man chasing after him was a martial Dao master, Yi Xing was really shocked. This martial Dao master was obviously here for him. Yi Xing's thoughts turned and he guessed the middle-aged man's identity. There was only one martial Dao master that he had offended, and that was Xiong Qicai's father, Xiong Baotian. Yi Xing did not guess wrongly. The person chasing after him was Xiong Baoyan, the Xiong family's level 7 martial Dao master. Xiong Baotian was the youngest level 7 martial Dao master in the Xiong family's Purple Mountain Academy's genius class. He was also the second elder of the Xiong family. In terms of status, Xiong Baotian was on the same level as the Xiong family's first elder and Xiong family's patriarch. They were big shots that could shake the entire celestial city with a stomp of their feet. Xiong Baoyan was, and Xiong Baotian when he was at his age. If Xiong Qicai did not fall, he would definitely become a LV6 martial artist in the future and become an elder of the Xiong family. He might even have the opportunity to become a LV7 martial Dao master. Xiong Baoyan's Baoyan, Xiong Baoyan was enraged by Xiong Qicai's death. As soon as he received the news, he brought Xiong Yifei to the Green Cloud Mountain Range. Unfortunately, Yi Xing fled into the Green Cloud Mountain Range after killing Xiong Qicai and the others. Xiong Baotian was unable to catch up with Yi Xing even after one night and one day. Although Xiong Yifei remembered Yi Xing, he did not know of Yi Xing's identity. Yi Xing had been staying in the small green leaf village and followed Yi Yunlong to the Ye family's main residence. Naturally, the Xiong family was unable to find Yi Xing. It was not until Yi Xing and Xiong Yifei met at the Genius Summit that the Xiong family found out the identity of Xiong Qicai's killer. The Ye family and the Xiong family were not on good terms. If Xiong Baotian went to the Ye family to look for Yi Xing, it would be a wasted trip. Therefore, Xiong Baotian did not waste his efforts. After learning of Yi Xing's identity, he already had a plan to take Yi Xing's life in the hunting competition. However, the premise of this plan was that Xiong Baotian could find Yi Xing in the boundless Green Cloud Mountain Range. This was not a problem for Xiong Baotian. With the help of others, he entered the Green Cloud Mountain Range on the second day of the hunting competition. It only took him half a day to find Yi Xing. A LV7 martial Dao master, his mid-class light body technique must have reached perfection. He also cultivated a remnant high-class light body technique. Coupled with his vigorous internal force, his speed was naturally much faster than Yi Xing's. I'm not a match for a LV7 martial Dao master, but he's faster than me. What should I do? Yi Xing's superbrain was operating at a terrifying speed. Whoosh! When Xiong Baotian was within 500 steps of him, Yi Xing, who used the flying swan technique, flipped in the air, drew his bow and shot an arrow. The arrow turned into a cold light. Its speed was not slower than the speed of sound. In an instant, it shot hundreds of steps and was more than 10 meters away from Xiong Baotian. However, at this moment, Xiong Baotian suddenly took out a long sword from his waist. With a flash of the sword, his internal force left the sword and turned into a fierce sword aura. Bang! Before the arrow touched the sword, it was split in half by the fierce sword aura. Yi Xing sucked in a breath of cold air. The LV7 martial Dao master was indeed powerful. He couldn't even block the sword chi from Yi Xing's body. If he was hit, his flesh would definitely be torn apart. Xiong Baoyan split the arrow with his sword and continued to chase Yi Xing like a galloping horse. He said coldly, "Boy, you killed my son's genius. Today, you will be buried with my son. I will tear you into pieces to vent the hatred in my heart." Listening to Xiong Baoyan's words, Yi Xing confirmed Xiong Baoyan's identity. It was as he expected. Whoosh! Yi Xing shot another arrow. The arrow spun in the void and its trajectory was distorted. He used the revolving arrow technique. The arrow was extremely fast, but a martial Dao master's eyesight was not ordinary. As soon as Yi Xing shot the arrow, Xiong Baotian swung his sword. The sword aura shot out and the arrow was split in half from more than 10 meters away. Although the revolving arrow technique was known for its transformation, Yixing's cultivation was too low and his internal force was not strong enough. Even if he used the revolving arrow technique, it would not pose a threat to Xiong Baotian. After Xiong Baotian split the second arrow, his body was much closer to Yixing. The distance between them was only about 200 steps. Yixing's face revealed a look of panic. He shouted, "I am in the depths of the Blue Cloud Mountain. How can you find me?" As he spoke, Yixing pulled out 3 arrows at once. He pulled the bowstring and shot them out. The 3 arrows spun in the void. But because of the panic in his heart, Yixing's arrows were a little inaccurate. Only 2 arrows continued to shoot towards Xiong Baotian after drawing a distorted trajectory. There was another arrow that flew very far away and hit a tree with a ding sound. Xiong Baoan was like a galloping horse. His speed did not decrease. He swung his sword and the 2 arrows that shot towards him were instantly cut in half by the sharp sword aura when they were still more than 10 meters away. "Brat, I'll let you know before you die. Someone sprinkled something on your body. It's invisible, colorless, and tasteless. But I have a kind of spirit pet that can smell it. So, even if you are at the end of the world, as long as the thing on your body is still there, you can't escape from my grasp." Xiong Baotian's voice was cold. As he spoke, the distance between him and Yixing was shortened by a lot. They were already close to 100 steps. Yixing's expression became even more panicked. He did not dare to shoot again. He continued to use the flying swan technique to escape quickly. However, Xiong Baotian's speed was much faster than his. The distance between the two of them was getting closer and closer. Finally, when the distance between the two of them was reduced to about 50 steps, Xiong Baoan laughed harshly, "Go to hell, brat." Xiong Baotian took a deep breath. His vigorous inner strength completely erupted at this moment. His body leaped and his speed increased explosively. He shot forward. The long sword in his hand was like a cold star as it pierced towards the back of Yixing's heart. At this moment, Xiong Baotian turned his qing gong into a movement technique. He used the incomplete upper-grade movement technique, Tiger Leap Step. His body was like a tiger as he pounced towards Yixing. The distance of dozens of steps was covered in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, Xiong Baotian used a sword technique from the incomplete upper-grade martial technique, Heart-Slaying Sword, an incomplete upper-grade movement technique, and a sword technique from the incomplete upper-grade martial technique. These were all powerful martial arts that non-elders could not even come into contact with. Xiong Baotian used such a martial art the moment he made his move. He launched a sure-kill attack on Yixing. Just as Xiong Baotian was about to kill him, Yixing was already prepared and launched a counterattack. Bush, bush, bush. Yixing turned around at this moment. He had already knocked 3 arrows on his bow and shot them out. At the same time, Yixing used the 7-star step to the limit to dodge Xiong Baotian's sure-kill attack. Yixing's martial arts were executed without any mistakes. However, his expression was even more panicked and even terrified. Of the 3 arrows that were shot out, one of them flew out. With a whoosh, it drew a spinning trajectory in the air and shot into the distance. The other 2 arrows turned and shot towards Xiong Baotian's head from the left and right. Xiong Baotian maintained his sword piercing towards Yixing's heart. He extended his hand and flicked 2 fingers. Middle-grade martial technique, air-piercing finger. 2 explosions sounded in the air. The air-piercing finger at the perfection stage, coupled with the terrifying inner strength that could penetrate the skin, had an astonishing strength. The 2 arrows were hit by the finger strength and instantly shattered, flying to the side. Xiong Baotian's face revealed a vicious smile. The only thing that he valued about Yixing was his profound archery skills. Now that he was within 30 steps of Yixing, before he stabbed Yixing to death, Yixing would definitely not have the chance to shoot another arrow. However, in the next moment, Xiong Baotian's expression suddenly became shocked. The arrow that he had overlooked was actually not shot by Yixing, but by Yixing's intention. He had turned around behind him and in an instant, shot towards his back. Yixing was retreating with the 7-star step and his speed was extremely fast. It was not much slower than the speed of his sword. He wanted to kill Yi Xing with one strike, but he was about to fail. Only at this moment did Xiong Batian finally understand that Yi Xing's earlier expression of panic and terror was all a facade. It was even to the extent that even the arrow that had missed its mark earlier was a facade. The goal was to numb him and make him lower his guard. Then when he thought that he was going to kill Yi Xing with one strike, Yi Xing suddenly exploded with his true strength and schemed against him. This made Xiong Baoan suck in a breath of cold air. After the arrow was shot, it turned around. This was the flying revolving arrow technique at the perfection stage and was enough to avoid his heart-piercing sword. This meant that Yi Xing's 7-star steps was also at the perfection stage. What was most out of Xiong Baoyan's expectations was that Yi Xing was only a 16-year-old youth but had such a state of mind. He actually pretended to panic and successfully made Xiong Baotian lower his guard and schemed against him. Without any time for Xiong Baotian to think, a sharp pain came from his back. How fast was the arrow flying back? By the time Xiong Baotian realized it, it was already too late. The sharp arrow turned into a cold light and shot into Xiong Baotian's back. Chapter 56. When the arrow entered his body, even if Xiong Batian was a martial Dao master, he could not avoid it. He could not block it. Xiong Batian did not dodge. He did not block it. He allowed the arrow to enter his body and continued to stab towards Yi Xing. Die! Instead, he let out a loud roar and increased his strength. He would not stop until he had killed Yi Xing with a single stab. At this moment, the terrifying inner strength in Xiong Baishan's body exploded to the extreme. The inner strength flowed out from the long sword and turned into a cold light that could be seen by the naked eye. It pierced towards Yi Xing's heart. Yi Xing's expression changed. This time, he was in real danger. He thought that Xiong Batian would turn around to save himself when he was hit by the arrow. Yi Xing took the opportunity to retreat and shoot arrows from a distance while Xiong Batian was injured. He wanted to see if he could kill Xiong Batian with his perfect revolving arrow technique. However, Xiong Batian did not care about the arrow that entered his body. He only cared about killing Yi Xing and caused Yi Xing to fall into a life-and-death situation. Ever since Yi Xing came to the Star Continent, this was the first time he encountered such a life-and-death crisis. Even when he was a Stage 2 martial Dao disciple and was chased by Xiong Qicai and the other Xiong family disciples, he did not have such a terrifying feeling of not having his life in his hands. In Yi Xing's eyes, everything in the world disappeared and only Xiong Baishan's sword was left. This was a martial Dao master's sword that risked his life. It was extremely terrifying and could kill a Stage 6 martial artist in seconds. However, Yi Xing had to dodge this sword. He had to dodge it. If he could not dodge it, he would die. At this moment, Yi Xing's superbrain was operating to the limit. Yi Xing knew all the changes of this sword in the superbrain scan. However, the key was that this sword was too fast. Even if he knew, he could not dodge it. Yi Xing immediately rejected the idea of not being able to dodge it. He had survived a great disaster and came to the Star Continent to live another life. He could not die like this. He still wanted to become a martial saint, a peerless expert. He still wanted to stand at the peak of this world and take a look. He still had many things that he wanted to do. How could he be killed in the Azure Cloud mountain range for no apparent reason, and in the end, not even his bones remained? This is definitely not my ending. At this moment, Yi Xing was screaming in his heart. His strong will to live made his spirit sublimate. Yi Xing stepped on the Big Dipper steps, and his speed actually surpassed the Big Dipper steps of the Great Circle. Like a phantom, he instantly retreated diagonally. At this moment, Yi Xing's Big Dipper steps had surpassed perfection, surpassed the limits, and reached a new height. Transformative state. Yi Xing's Big Dipper steps had practically touched the border of the realm of the transformative stage. This caused his speed to almost reach the acme of perfection. He narrowly avoided Xiong Baoyan's heart-piercing sword. However, Yi Xing's Big Dipper steps had not truly reached the realm of the transformative stage. Furthermore, Xiong Baoyan was a level 7 martial Dao master. The speed of this sword was extremely fast. Yi Xing avoided the vital point of his heart, but he could not avoid the attack on his entire body. As Yi Xing retreated diagonally, the sword qi, which was like a cold ray of light, slashed across his chest to his shoulder. The sword aura was fierce and sharp. Even though Yi Xing's green skin secret technique had been cultivated to perfection and his skin was very tough, this terrifying sword aura still cut open a wound. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere. However, he still managed to avoid the fatal blow. After Xiong Baoan stabbed with his sword, his body staggered. Yi Xing endured the pain of his wound, and his figure was like an arrow as he quickly distanced himself from Xiong Baoyan. "There's poison on the arrow?" Xiong Baoyan's brows were tightly knitted together as he coldly shouted. As a level 7 martial Dao master who had cultivated for nearly 40 years, Xiong Baoyan's middle-grade body refining technique had already reached perfection. In addition to the dense inner strength in his body, he did not put Yi Xing's arrow in his eyes. Therefore, when the arrow entered his body, Xiong Baotian did not dodge or block. Instead, he used his tough flesh and dense inner strength to resist Yi Xing's arrow. If this arrow could take his life, he would definitely do everything he could to remedy it. It was impossible for him to sacrifice his own life just to kill Yi Xing. Although the penetrating power of this arrow was strong, Xiong Baoyan's physical defense was indeed not ordinary. In addition to the dense inner strength blocking the arrow, although it entered his flesh, it did not penetrate too deep. It did not pierce his heart, so it did not cause fatal damage to Xiong Baoyan. If it was only this little injury, Xiong Baotian could endure the arrow wound and continue to attack. He could take advantage of Yi Xing's injury to kill Yi Xing completely. However, the poison on the arrow was another matter altogether. Xiong Baotian coldly shouted and made a decision. He resolutely turned around and quickly left. The arrow wound was too close to his heart. He had to quickly stop the poison and force it out. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. If he continued to pursue Yi Xing, even if he succeeded, there was an 80 to 90% chance that he would lose his life. Seeing Xiong Baotian escape, Yi Xing made a prompt decision. He shot 3 arrows at the same time towards Xiong Baotian. Take advantage of his illness to kill him. However, when the arrow left the bowstring, Yi Xing's wound ruptured and blood gushed out like a fountain. Yi Xing drew the bow once and lowered his arms due to the intense pain. His injury was not light either. He wanted to shoot continuously, but he could no longer. The 3 arrows spun in the air and shot towards Xiong Baotian from different directions. At this moment, Xiong Baotian was holding his breath and using his inner strength to suppress the arrow poison. At the same time, he was using all his strength to perform Qinggong. He wanted to escape quickly and find a safe place to force the poison out and heal his injury. Since Xiong Baotian's energy and inner strength were used to suppress the arrow poison and speed up his escape, his reaction in other aspects was naturally slower. Out of the 3 arrows, only 2 were blocked by Xiong Baotian. He was half a beat slower in drawing his sword and the last arrow hit his back. This made his injury worse. "Kid, when I see you next time, I'll skin you alive." Xiong Baotian roared angrily. Although there were 2 arrows in his back, he did not stop and quickly left. As a level 7 martial Dao master, Xiong Baotian could do whatever he wanted in Tiansong City. When had he ever been in such a sorry state? But today he was shot twice by a junior like Yi Xing. His life was in danger and he had no choice but to flee. How could Xiong Baotian accept this? He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. With his strength, as long as he did not let his guard down, even if Yi Xing's flying revolving arrow technique was at the perfect stage, it would be difficult for him to hurt him. And as long as he was not injured, Yi Xing would definitely die under his sword today. How could it be such an outcome? He came in high spirits and chased after Yi Xing. He originally thought that killing Yi Xing would be an easy matter. In the end, he was schemed by Yi Xing and almost lost his life. This made Xiong Baotian furious. Xiong Baotian secretly made up his mind. If there was a next time, he would definitely not underestimate Yi Xing. He would use all his strength to kill Yi Xing like a lion hunting a rabbit. He would definitely not give Yi Xing any chance. Yi Xing's face was pale and blood was gushing from his wound. He supported the cauldron bow on the ground and stood firm. He watched Xiong Baotian leave. If he had not been seriously injured and could not continue to draw the bow, he would definitely have taken advantage of Xiong Baotian's injury to kill him. If he killed Xiong Baotian, he would have killed a 7th-level martial Dao master. Yi Xing was very excited when he thought about it. Unfortunately, Yi Xing was also injured and was unable to chase after Xiong Baotian. He quickly pressed on the acupoints near the wound to stop the bleeding. Then he took out a middle-grade medicinal herb and consumed it to heal his injury. Someone put something on me so that Xiong Baotian could find me. Who is it? Yi Xing thought. Since the start of the hunting competition, Yi Xing had only been with the younger generation of the Ye family. There were only 3 people who were close to Yi Xing. They were Yi Yunwei Yunkong and Yi Yunjue. Yi Yunjue was eliminated by Yi Xing because he had been shot dead before he could even get close to him. As for Yi Yunwan, Yi Xing did not find anything suspicious. Moreover, Yi Yunwan had no reason to harm him with the Xiong family. After eliminating Yi Yunjue and Yi Yunwan, there was only Yi Yunkong left. Yi Yunkong's actions were also very suspicious. He had apologized to him for no reason. At that time, Yi Xing felt that Yi Yunkong was a little strange, but he did not think much of it. Now it seemed that Yi Yunkong must have used the excuse of apologizing to get close to him and put something invisible, colorless, and tasteless on his body. Therefore, Xiong Baoan had followed the tracking of his spiritual pet and found him. Yi Yunkong. Yi Xing's eyes flashed with a sharp light. If it really was Yi Yunkong, Yi Xing would never let him go. Not only was he a traitor, but he had also colluded with outsiders to harm his life. This kind of person had to be killed. However, Yunkong was just a junior. He might not be able to collude with Xiong Baotian. Yi Xing even suspected that the old man Yi Weining was the real mastermind behind Yi Yunkong. After all, Yi Yunkong was just a 17 or 18-year-old youth. He was still immature. Even if he hated him, it would be difficult for him to collude with Xiong Baotian to kill him. If Yi Weining was the mastermind, it would make more sense. I will get to the bottom of this. No matter who it is, if they want to kill me, they will have to pay with their own life. Yi Xing thought to himself. The superbrain scanned his body a few times. Yi Xing finally found a powdery substance on his clothes. It seemed to be the colorless, and tasteless substance that Xiong Baodan had mentioned. Even the superbrain had to scan it a few times before it found something. It was hard to tell if there was such a substance on one's body. After the wounds on his body had healed a little, Yi Xing left the area. His expression was vigilant as he avoided the territories of some powerful demonic beasts. Soon he arrived at a stream, where he jumped into the water and washed his clothes and body. After making a fire to dry his clothes, Yi Xing continued to leave the place. Although he did not know how long it would take for Xiong Baotian to force out his lust and recover from his injuries, Yi Xing did not want to take the risk. He definitely did not want to meet Xiong Baotian a second time. Have you sent in your recommendation votes today? Just a little bit more and the Archer God's weekly recommendation will reach 4,000. Chapter 57. Yi Xing walked through the forest during the day and dug a hole to hide for the night. 3 days later, Yi Xing was far away from the area where he fought Xiong Baotian. Yi Xing had used his superbrain to scan his body and confirmed that the invisible, colorless, and odorless thing had been completely removed. After Xiong Baotian recovered, he would not be able to find him in the Emerald Cloud mountain range. The healing effect of the mid-grade healing herbs was very good. In just 3 days, Yi Xing's wounds had completely healed. There were only some scars, which did not affect Yi Xing's strength. Yi Xing continued to hunt dire beasts and search for herbs. Yi Xing's efficiency in hunting dire beasts and searching for herbs was simply too high compared to other martial artists. His harvest in a day was not something a level 6 martial artist could achieve in a month. This was not just a matter of archery attainment, but also the difference in eyesight. Yi Xing's eyes were the superbrain scanners. They could see far, see through things, and scan things. Regardless of whether it was searching for ferocious beasts or herbs, they were far better than other martial artists. Most importantly, Yixing could also guard against danger in advance. In areas where mid-grade dire beasts roamed, there would occasionally be high-level dire beasts. Yixing could discover them in advance and avoid them. If other martial artists did not discover them in advance and accidentally encountered high-level dire beasts, even a level 7 martial Dao master might not be able to deal with them. Only someone like Yixing, who was highly efficient and safe in the Emerald Cloud Mountain range, could be called the king of the jungle. On the 7th day of the hunting competition, Yixing obtained a large amount of mid-grade herbs to replenish his qi and blood. His bronze tactic had made great progress and had broken through to the Great Mastery realm. Yunlong's bronze tactic attainment was only at the Great Mastery realm. This was the main reason why Yunlong's combat power was far superior to his peers. Now, in front of Yixing, Yunlong's advantage was not considered an advantage at all. Moreover, Yixing's bones were completely refined and the foundation of his body was built. Yixing's bronze tactic was also at the Great Mastery realm. His body was stronger than Yunlong's. Although Yunlong's cultivation level, Yixing had 10 meridians. Yunlong's inner force, compared to Yunlong's peak level 5 martial Dao, Yi had 10 meridians. Compared to Yunlong, Yi had Yunlong, Yixing had 10 meridians. Compared to level 5 level Yunlong, Yi had 10 meridian channels. And therefore, in terms of internal force, Yixing was no weaker than Yunlong. In terms of martial arts, Yixing's low-grade and middle-grade martial arts techniques, as well as his Qinggong, were all at the Great Mastery realm. He was much stronger than Yunlong. Regardless of which aspect, Yixing surpassed Yunlong. From this, it could be seen that Yixing's strength was much stronger than Yunlong's. In the past few days, Yixing's cultivation level did not improve as much as his body refining technique, but it was still much better. Among the herbs that Yixing had obtained, some of them contained more star force and were very helpful in improving cultivation level. In the past few days, Yixing's cultivation level had almost reached the peak of level 5. He was very close to level 5 mid-level. Yixing had obtained a large number of middle-grade vicious beast left ears. It was a number that a level 6 martial artist would not be able to obtain in a few months. It should not be a problem for the Yi clan to win the hunting competition. However, the hunting competition was not over yet. To ensure that nothing went wrong, Yixing continued to hunt. On the 8th day of the hunting competition, Yixing arrived at a new place. In the area where Yixing was, top-grade vicious beasts were very common. The other young elites did not dare to come here. Ever since Yixing met with Xiong Baotian, he did not meet any young elites or other martial artists. Today was the same as the previous few days. Yixing killed the vicious beasts cleanly. If there were herbs, he would pick them. If there were no herbs, he would continue to look for vicious beasts. When Yixing killed his third vicious beast and obtained his first middle-grade herb of the day, there was a slight change in the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. When the super brain scanned the surroundings, Yixing found that the ground was shaking slightly. Yixing could not feel the shaking even though he was standing on the ground. However, the super brain could scan it. The ground was shaking as if there was a giant hitting the ground from afar. As time passed, Yixing found that the shaking was getting stronger and stronger through the super brain scan. Gradually, his body could feel it clearly. The source of the shaking was deeper in the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. Yixing quickly climbed to the top of a mountain next to him. He looked into the distance and into the depths of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. The mountain Yixing was on was already more than 1,000 meters tall. However, there was a huge mountain ridge 10 miles ahead. The height was not lower than the mountain Yixing was standing on. It blocked Yixing's line of sight. Yixing looked into the distance. He could see clearly 10 miles away. He found many vicious beasts. Usually, it was rare to see so many vicious beasts during the day. It was obvious that they had all come out of their lairs. These vicious beasts also felt the shaking of the ground. He did not know what it was, but they raised their heads and looked into the depths of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. Soon, there were vicious beasts running towards the periphery of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. In other words, it was where Yixing was. After the first, there was a second, a third. Usually, it was not easy to find a vicious beast. Now, they all took the initiative to run towards Yixing. However, there was no joy on Yixing's face. At this time, he could not help but feel the shaking of the ground clearly. He could also hear a dull sound coming from the depths of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. Yixing immediately lowered his head to the ground and put his ear to the ground to listen. The dull sound was suddenly magnified by more than 10 times. It was like the sound of thousands of soldiers and horses galloping. This sound was definitely not caused by the vicious beasts running in his line of sight. Yixing's face suddenly changed. He finally understood the source of the shaking and the source of the sound. It was a beast tide. Thousands of vicious beasts were running from the depths of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range to the periphery. In the tall mountain ridge in front, there were vaguely high-level vicious beasts. There must be a large number of high-level vicious beasts in the depths of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range behind the mountain ridge. Even the weakest high-level vicious beast was enough to make a 7th-level martial Dao master feel troubled. If thousands of high-level vicious beasts rushed over, what kind of terrifying scene would that be? Even if a 9th-level martial Dao master fell into a group of high-level vicious beasts, he would probably die. Perhaps, only the legendary martial sage would dare to face thousands of high-level vicious beasts. Yixing understood why the mid-level vicious beasts in his line of sight were running to the periphery. They obviously sensed a large number of high-level vicious beasts running in this direction. They did not know the reason, but they were very afraid. Therefore, they abandoned their territory and fled to the periphery of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. Yixing also ran in the direction of the periphery of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. Not to mention being surrounded by high-level vicious beasts, even if he was targeted by a high-level vicious beast, his life would be in danger. Yixing had just run down from the peak of the mountain when a large number of huge vicious beasts rushed out from the huge mountain ridge dozens of miles away from the depths of the Emerald Cloud Mountain range. Hearing the sound of rushing behind him getting louder and louder, Yixing looked back from a mountain ridge and was shocked. He had never seen so many vicious beasts. Moreover, many of the vicious beasts were huge. They were at least 10 feet tall and looked extremely frightening. Why am I so plagued with misfortune? It's just a hunting competition. First, I was followed by Yi Yunjue to assassinate me. Then, I was followed by Xiong Badian who wanted to take my life. Now, I've encountered a beast tide. Damn it. The situation is getting worse and worse. Yixing used the flying swan technique to the limit and cursed in his heart. The hunting competition only lasted for 10 days and he had encountered so many dangers. Yixing felt that he was being cheated. He seemed to have bad luck and was not favored by the heavens. The high-level vicious beasts were very fast. Fortunately, Yixing's attainments in Qinggong were also very high. Using the flying swan technique, he was not caught by the vicious beast army behind him. However, when a canyon appeared in front of Yixing, he cursed in his heart again. Damn it! They're not leaving me with a way out. In front of Yixing was a canyon that was more than 1,000 meters wide. As for the width, one could not see the end of it with normal eyesight. Yixing looked into the distance and saw that it was dozens of miles away. The edge of the canyon that was closer to him was also more than 10 miles away. Yixing looked back and saw that the vicious beast army had spread out and ran to the two sides of the canyon. However, there were also some vicious beasts that continued to move forward and headed straight for the canyon. Among these vicious beasts, more than half of them were high-level vicious beasts with huge bodies. When a huge black tiger that was more than 20 feet long and 10 feet tall discovered Yixing and rushed toward him, Yixing resolutely turned around and jumped into the canyon below. The huge black tiger pounced to the edge of the canyon. Its huge tiger eyes looked at Yixing's descent and did not follow him. Yixing's attainments in the flying swan technique had reached perfection. His body was as light as a swallow and greatly reduced the speed of his descent. Moreover, there were many protruding rocks on both sides of the canyon. Yixing would land on some protruding rocks every 10 feet or so. Therefore, even if the canyon was dozens of feet deep, Yixing would not die if he jumped down. Before Yixing completely landed at the bottom of the canyon, a sudden gust of wind blew. This gust of wind was so strong that it could probably blow away a 1,000-pound boulder. Yi Xing instantly lost control of his body and was directly blown away by the gust of wind. Damn it! This was what it meant when it rains, it pours. Yi Xing had never expected that such a violent gust of wind would suddenly blow in this canyon. He was blown away like a grain of sand. Yi Xing was blown away by the violent gust of wind until he was about 30 feet above the ground in the canyon. His body kept spinning and he could not control it at all. Yi Xing was shocked, but he soon calmed down. Although he could not control his body, he used his super brain to scan the wind around him. This was the first time Yi Xing felt the power of the wind so intimately. It was also the first time he understood the power of the wind through his superbrain scan. Yi Xing seemed to have understood something about the wind. However, before Yi Xing could understand anything, he was blown to the end of the canyon by the gust of wind. There was a dark cave there, and he was directly blown into it. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xing crashed into the wall of the cave, and his head was bleeding. The wind in the cave was even stronger. The wind was so fast that it was shocking. Yi Xing quickly moved forward in the cave. Chapter 58. Every time the cave took a turn, Yi Xing would crash into the cave wall. After a few times, even if he had a good bone structure and had mastered bronze art, he still felt like his body was about to fall apart. The places where he crashed into the wall were covered in wounds, and blood even flowed out. The powerful superbrain came into play at that moment. If a normal person was forced to move quickly in a dark cave while crashing into the walls, they would have lost their sense of direction and would only scream in fear. However, Yi Xing remained calm. The superbrain kept scanning the wind to study the mysteries of the wind. Yi Xing's body was also constantly sensing the changes in the wind. He knew that if he did not understand the force of the wind, he would not be able to control his body in the wind. He would definitely die from the collisions. Unfortunately, the wind was formless and could change in an instant. It did not have a normal state, so it was very difficult to understand the force of the wind. Yi Xing seemed to have understood something, but when he really wanted to understand it, he was at a loss. Even though the superbrain kept scanning the wind and analyzed the power of the wind very thoroughly, it was very limited in helping Yi Xing understand the force of the wind. What was really useful was Yi Xing's body. He was constantly sensing the changes in the wind, and he could also feel how the wind destroyed him. It was impossible for him not to understand it deeply. He did not know how long the underground cave was, but Yi Xing felt like it was connected to all directions. Even though he could not see it with his eyes, when the superbrain scanned the area, it found that there were a few other caves that were connected to each other. He was constantly being moved by the wind, and he was constantly feeling the wind. As long as he was not unconscious, anyone with Yi Xing's experience would have a certain understanding of the force of the wind. Yi Xing's comprehension was very high, and it was even better than a normal person's. After he crashed into the cave, he finally understood a bit of the force of the wind. However, when Yi Xing comprehended a trace of wind force, he was already covered in injuries from the collision at this time, and was practically on the verge of death. Compared to the ferocious gale, this gust of wind was still insignificant. Yi Xing was unable to stop his body in the midst of the gale, and could only move with the wind to reduce the damage caused by the collision. After an unknown amount of time, when Yi Xing thought that he was going to be blown to death by the wind in this cave, he fiercely slammed into a stone wall. At this moment, the wind stopped, and Yi Xing fell to the ground. No longer feeling the wind, Yi Xing heaved a sigh of relief and fainted. When he opened his eyes again, he didn't know how much time had passed. His vision was hazy, and he could vaguely make out an exquisite figure. In an instant, Yi Xing came to his senses. He seemed to be in a dark cave. How could there be a human figure? This made Yi Xing's spirit rise. He blinked his eyes, and his vision suddenly became clear. He was still in the cave, and the light in the cave was still dim. However, he seemed to be somewhat familiar with it, so he could still see things clearly. At this moment, he was lying on a stone slab. There was indeed an exquisite figure in front of him. It was a girl in a purple dress whose clothes were somewhat tattered, and she was looking at him. The purple-dressed girl's hair was slightly messy, and there were some bloodstains on her face. However, even so, it couldn't hide her peerless appearance, which was breathtaking. Seeing Yi Xing open his eyes, the purple-dressed girl's eyes immediately lit up. She said in an excited tone, "Yi Xing, you're awake?" Yi Xing looked at the purple-dressed girl and felt that she was very familiar. After hearing the purple-dressed girl's words, he immediately recognized her identity. Yi Xing said in surprise, "You are Wei Qingxian?" The purple-dressed girl nodded and said, "You were also blown in by the wind, right?" "Me too. Yesterday, I chased a fierce beast into a cave. In the end, there was a sudden gust of wind in the cave, and I don't know how far I was blown. In short, I was knocked unconscious in the end, and it took me a long time to wake up." Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian had never spoken. They had only seen each other at the Genius Summit. At that time, Wei Qingxuan's face was covered with a thin veil, and Yi Xing didn't use his X-ray vision to peek. Therefore, he didn't even know what Wei Qingxian looked like. The two of them didn't have any friendship. However, in this pitch-black cave, there was only Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian. Naturally, there was a sense of intimacy. Therefore, Wei Qingxuan's tone sounded very familiar. Yi Xing rubbed his head. His body was strong, and his recovery was strong. After being unconscious for a long time, his injuries were more or less healed. After all, the injuries from the collision weren't serious. It was only because of the repeated collisions that he was knocked unconscious in the end. Yi Xing asked, "How long have I been unconscious?" Wei Qingxian shook her head and said, "When I saw you, you were already unconscious. It's been about an hour since then. I don't know how long you were unconscious before." Yi Xing carefully looked at Wei Qingxian. Previously, he had only taken a casual glance, but he felt that she was very stunning. Now that he looked at her carefully, he felt that she was absolutely beautiful. She definitely surpassed any girl he had seen before. Yi Yunwan and Yi Yundai were already beautiful enough, but Wei Qingyan's temperament was even better than Yi Yunwan and Yi Yundi's. However, whether it was Yi Yunwan, Yi Yundai, or Wei Qingxian, they all paled in comparison to Wei Qingxuan's appearance. Wei Qingxian was truly a peerless beauty. No one could find any flaw in her. It seemed that the rumor that Wei Qingxian was as beautiful as her sister, Wei Qingyan, was not true. They were not just as beautiful, they were on a higher level. No wonder she always covered her face with a veil when she met people. Even though Yi Xing's heart was devoted to martial arts, and his beliefs were firm, and he didn't want to be entangled in the affairs of men and women, when he looked at Wei Qingxian carefully, he couldn't help but be slightly dazed. Wei Qingxian was a bit unhappy with Yi Xing's gaze. She turned her back to Yi Xing and said, "The caves here are like a maze. There are many connected caves. I walked for an entire day and still couldn't get out. In the end, I found you. If we can't get out of here, I'm afraid we'll die here." Wei Qingxuan's actions caused Yi Xing to immediately come back to his senses. He was secretly shocked. This woman's appearance had almost reached a level where it could make men go crazy. However, when Yi Xing calmed his mind, the stray thoughts in his heart immediately calmed down. His heart towards martial arts was very firm. Even though Wei Qingxuan's appearance could be said to be peerless in the world, it couldn't shake Yi Xing. Yi Xing stood up and said, "We won't die. As long as there's a way out, we can walk out. Since the wind can blow in, it means that there's definitely an exit in this cave." Wei Qingxian nodded. She turned to look at Yi Xing and said, "How are you now? If you can, let's go now. We don't have any food. We have to get out of here quickly. Otherwise, we'll starve to death." Yi Xing used his X-ray vision to scan the surroundings. He said confidently, "As long as there's a way out, I'll definitely be able to walk out. Follow me." The light in the cave was dim. Wei Qingxuan's vision was limited. Moreover, the cave extended in all directions. Wei Qingxian walked for an entire day. Most of the time, she walked around in small circles. She walked back and forth and often returned to the original place. However, Yi Xing's X-ray vision and scanning were not affected by the light. Every time there was a fork in the cave, Yi Xing could distinguish the direction and walk in one direction. Yi Xing was very sure that he didn't walk in the same place. He also didn't walk in circles. The general direction he walked in was the same from beginning to end. However, they walked continuously for 3 days and still couldn't walk out of the cave. It could be seen that the length and scope of the cave were unimaginably large. Yi Xing remembered that the entrance to the cave was at the bottom of the canyon. It was about 100 meters above the ground. This meant that these caves were all underground. If they couldn't find the exit, they would definitely not be able to leave. There was no other way. Yi Xing was sure that the direction he was walking in had not changed. He could only continue to walk forward. The 4th day, the 5th day, Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian were so hungry that their stomachs were growling. However, they still walked in the underground cave. There was a feeling that they would never reach the end. It was very depressing. After so many days, the hunting competition had already ended. However, Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian were still trapped in this underground cave. I hunted a lot of ferocious beasts and harvested a few middle-grade herbs. Unfortunately, the beast ears and herbs that I collected were blown away by the wind. Otherwise, those herbs could let us live for a few more days. Now we're going to starve to death. I wonder which family won the hunting competition? Without my score, House Wei's chances must be slim. Sigh. The cave was terrifyingly quiet. After staying in the underground cave for several days, it was almost enough to drive people crazy. Even though Wei Qingxian was not a talkative person, she became more talkative after 5 days. Yi Xing's state of mind was as usual. Although he was a little hungry, he believed that he could definitely leave this place. As the saying goes, one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune later. First, he escaped the pursuit of Xiong Bat Yin, a martial Dao master. Then he escaped the terrifying beast tide. Finally, he was blown into the cave by the wind and knocked unconscious. Finally, he woke up. If he didn't die, how could he starve to death in this cave? Yi Xing didn't believe it. He always believed that the exit was right in front of him. If he persevered, he would definitely be able to get out. The 6th day, the 7th day, the 8th day, after walking for 8 consecutive days and being hungry for 8 consecutive days, Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian were so hungry that their chests were sticking to their backs. Their bodies were even more exhausted. No, I can't walk anymore. It seems that I'm really going to starve to death here. Wei Qingxian leaned against the stone wall and stopped. Yi Xing helped her up and said, "We might be close to the exit. Maybe we can see it after a few more steps." Yi Xing had said this many times. Wei Qingxian no longer believed him and said, "You've said it no less than 10 times. When did it ever come true?" Yi Xing was speechless. That was indeed the case. Even his confidence was a little shaken. However, every time there was a trace of doubt, Yi Xing would crush the negative thoughts. He knew that only by persisting in moving forward, there was hope to get out. If they stopped, they would die without a doubt. Yi Xing used his X-ray vision and looked ahead. He wanted to see what was behind the turn in front of them. Yi Xing's eyes suddenly lit up. Climax. It's about to begin. Recommendation votes. Begging to be on the list. Begging for votes. Chapter 59. A large patch of green vines wrapped around the cave wall, and there were some blood-red oval-shaped fruits on it. Blood dike. High-grade medicinal herb blood dike. Yi Xing's eyes lit up as he exclaimed in excitement. Blood dike? High-grade medicinal herb blood dike that replenishes blood? Where is the blood dike? When Wei Qingxian heard this, her body, which was on the verge of collapse, suddenly gained strength and stood up. High-grade medicinal herbs were much more powerful than mid-grade medicinal herbs and were extremely precious. The blood dike was a high-grade medicinal herb that replenished blood. To the two of them who were on the verge of collapse from hunger, this was undoubtedly the best food. Wei Qingxuan's words immediately caused Yi Xing to recover from his excited state. The blood dike was located at the bend in front of them, and normal people would not be able to see it. If Yi Xing said that he saw it, it would obviously expose his X-ray vision. This was Yi Xing's secret, and he did not want to reveal it to anyone. Yi Xing took a deep breath and said, "I am very sensitive to the smell of medicinal herbs, and I have already smelled the scent of the blood dike. There must be a blood dike in front of us. So you guessed it. Wei Qingxian, who had just taken a breath, suddenly withered and felt weak all over. Yi Xing, who had seen the blood dike with his own eyes, was greatly stimulated. A vigorous force surged out of his body and directly carried Wei Qingxian. As he walked forward, he said, "My identification of medicinal herbs is very accurate. There must be a blood dike in front of us." At this time, Wei Qingxian was on her last breath. Yi Xing's action of carrying her was a little too intimate, so she didn't have time to say anything. The moment he thought of the large stretch of blood dike vines in front of him, Yi Xing's entire body was filled with energy. He carried Wei Qingxian and strode forward. Very quickly, he followed the cave and turned a corner, arriving at the cave wall that was covered in blood dike vines. Yi Xing had already scanned the cave walls and did not find the existence of any fierce beasts. This made Yi Xing surprised and pleasantly surprised at the same time. In his current state, it would be difficult for him to fight against the ferocious beasts. Moreover, the ferocious beasts guarding the high-grade medicinal herbs were definitely not ordinary. Even if they weren't high-grade ferocious beasts, they were still overlords among mid-grade ferocious beasts. Yi Xing's bow and arrows were blown away by the wind, but he didn't know where they had gone. Without his bow and arrows, he would even have to take a detour around mid-grade ferocious beasts. How would he dare to provoke a mid-grade overlord ferocious beast? Thus, Yi Xing was overjoyed that there were no ferocious beasts guarding this stretch of blood dike vines. Yi Xing scanned the area and instantly understood the number of blood dike vines. There were a total of 126 of them. One blood dike vines was very precious. In terms of value, 126 of them was definitely a huge sum. Yi Xing carried Wei Qingxian to this place and used up the last of his strength. At this moment, he felt like he was about to collapse as his entire body went soft. He looked at Wei Qingxian and saw that she was in an even worse state. She had already fallen into a coma. Yi Xing quickly plucked a blood dike vines and swallowed it without hesitation. If he ran all the way here and didn't have the strength to pluck more blood dike vines, it would be too tragic to watch a large number of them fall to the ground and starve to death. After eating one blood dike vines, Yi Xing immediately felt as if there was a ball of fire burning in his stomach. He immediately regained his strength and his exhaustion lessened a bit. One blood dike vines was not enough. Yi Xing quickly plucked a second one, then a third one. He ate every one he plucked. After eating 10 blood dike vines in a row, Yi Xing finally felt that the feeling of exhaustion was completely gone. However, his stomach was still hungry. Yi Xing continued to pluck a blood dike vines, but he didn't eat it himself. Instead, he fed it to Wei Qingxian. Wei Qingxian really couldn't take it anymore. She didn't even have the strength to swallow the blood dike vines in her mouth. Yi Xing directly crushed the blood dike vines. The juice flowed into Wei Qingxian's mouth. She tasted a delicious and sweet juice and instinctively swallowed it. As the juice of the blood dike vines was absorbed by Wei Qingxian, she finally regained some strength. When Yi Xing fed her the second blood dike vines, she was already able to swallow it directly. Yi Xing fed Wei Qingxian 10 blood dike vines in a row. Wei Qingxian had already woken up. Just like Yi Xing, her stomach was unbearably hungry, but she no longer had the feeling of exhaustion. It's really the blood dike vines. The moment Wei Qingxian opened her eyes, she cheered and reached out to grab the blood dike vines. Seeing that Wei Qingxian was able to pluck the blood dike vines by herself, Yi Xing didn't bother about her anymore. He was very hungry and continued to pluck more blood dike vines for himself. Both of them ate more than 30 blood dike vines before the feeling of hunger in their stomachs gradually faded away. However, a new problem arose at this moment. At this moment, their stomachs didn't look like a ball of fire burning. Instead, it was like a sea of fire burning. It burned their bodies until they were bright red and emitted hot air from their bodies. As a top-grade medicinal herb, the blood dike vines were extremely potent. In fact, Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian only needed to eat 7 to 8 blood dike vines. Even if they were starving to death, they only needed to wait for a period of time for the blood dike vines to be completely digested. All the nutrients would be replenished and their hunger would disappear completely. But they ate too quickly. The first blood dyke vines hadn't been fully digested and they had already eaten the second one. Very quickly, it was the third one, the fourth one. More and more blood dyke vines were eaten by the both of them, but they had only digested and absorbed slightly more than 10%. There was still 90% of the medicinal effects left in their bodies. By the time the both of them felt less hungry, they had already eaten more than 30 blood dyke vines respectively, and a terrifying medicinal effect had accumulated in their bodies. Just that heat alone made the both of them feel as though their bodies were about to combust. Momentarily, the both of them felt the blood in their bodies boiling as the boiling hot blood flowed upwards and rushed straight to their heads. The both of them felt a loud bang in their heads as blood flowed from their noses and they fainted. Earlier on, the both of them were so hungry that they were about to die. But now, the both of them had been nourished to the brim and were about to die. Their bodies had been greatly nourished and it had even exceeded the limits of what their bodies could bear. No one would be able to endure this. Luckily, the both of their bodies were very tough. Their middle-grade body refining techniques had been cultivated to the large success stage and above. Hence, under this nourishment that had exceeded their limits, they didn't die immediately and kept their lives. Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian both had the same dream. They dreamt that they had fallen into a sea of fire and there were raging flames all around them. The temperature in the air was unimaginably high. Hot. Too hot. The both of them were drenched in sweat. Subconsciously, they tore at their own clothes. Yi Xing was better off. After tearing a few times, only his chest was exposed at most. But Wei Qingxuan's female body was exposed after a few tearing. Especially her white and rosy, plump white rabbit, which was as plump as jade, was directly exposed. Wei Qingxian originally had a peerless beauty that could make men bewitched. At this moment, her breasts were exposed. If others were to see it, what would happen? Luckily, they were here and Yi Xing was unconscious. Hence, these extremely seductive breasts that could make one commit a crime were not seen by others. Even though she was tearing, Wei Qingxian didn't feel any relief. The source of this heat was in her body. Only by transferring the source of heat in her body would she be able to return to normal. Out of instinct, Wei Qingxian unconsciously climbed onto Yi Xing's body. Her hot and tender lips pressed onto Yi Xing's lips. She wanted to transfer the heat in her body to Yi Xing through this channel. Yi Xing suddenly felt a warm and soft sensation on his lips. This feeling was incomparably wonderful and instantly woke him up from his unconscious state. The moment he opened his eyes, Wei Qingxuan's actions made his mouth and tongue dry. His lower abdomen heated up and a wave of desire instantly rose up. He had the urge to press Wei Qingxian under his body and go through thick and thin together. However, Yi Xing's superbrain was different from a normal person's. He wasn't completely controlled by his desire. Instead, he maintained a certain level of consciousness. At this moment, Wei Qingxian was in an unconscious state. Although her actions were seductive, they weren't her original intention. No matter what, Yi Xing couldn't violate her in this state. Bang! With that thought, Yi Xing instantly pushed Wei Qingxian away and shouted loudly. It was as if someone had poured wisdom into Wei Qingxuan's head and woke her up instantly. When Wei Qingxian saw her own appearance, she was shocked and cried out involuntarily. However, she wasn't as calm as Yi Xing's superbrain. She was only awake for a moment. Very quickly, the heat in her body affected her mind again and her eyes became unfocused. Wei Qingxian, guard your mind and do as I say. Yi Xing continued to shout. His voice was like thunder, waking Wei Qingxian up again. Guard your spirit and qi moves in the sky, heaven above. Yi Xing shouted out the improved Xianxia skill cultivation formula. His 10 meridians circulated rapidly to refine the surging medicinal power in his body. Middle-class cultivation methods couldn't refine the rich medicinal power of the blood dam in his body. To prevent Wei Qingxian from losing her mind due to the rich medicinal power in her body, Yi Xing didn't think too much and taught her the improved Xianxia skill. With Yi Xing's shout and the guidance of the cultivation method, Wei Qingxuan's dizziness gradually calmed down. She absorbed the surging medicinal power in her body with all her might. Blood Dam was a top-grade medicinal herb that greatly nourished one's qi and blood. It had a great effect on strengthening the body. When Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian circulated the top-grade Xianxia skill, they instinctively circulated their own cultivation methods to strengthen their bodies. As time passed, the violent medicinal power in their bodies gradually calmed down. However, their cultivation levels were increasing rapidly. Their attainments in the middle-grade cultivation methods were increasing rapidly, and their bodies were strengthening non-stop. After a few hours, the medicinal power of the blood dam in their bodies had been completely refined. Their cultivation levels had both risen to the late stage of level 5. This speed was as fast as flying. As for the middle-grade cultivation methods, regardless of whether it was Yi Xing's bronze formula or Wei Qingxuan's mountain technique, they had both reached the perfection realm. The strength of their bodies was definitely at the top of the martial Dao masters. The two of them swallowed a large amount of blood dam, which almost caused them to burn to death. However, after refining the medicinal power in their bodies, they also obtained unimaginable benefits. Just 100 votes away from the overall ranking. Please give me a recommendation. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.